Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support. Yet Yoru had unleashed it effortlessly, without forming seals. This level of power was simply on a different scale. Tsunami was equally stunned. So this is what a ninja is capable of? He's incredible. He seems even stronger than Zabuza. Though Tsunami had encountered ninjas before, she'd only seen them fight with weapons, not use ninjutsu. The fact that Yoru's kunai was enveloped in brilliant golden lightning, which didn't harm him, seemed almost supernatural to her. For ordinary people, Yoru's display was nothing short of godlike. At that moment, Riga, who had been frantically searching for Yoru, finally spotted him at the bottom of the crater. His eyes narrowed. "You brat, so you finally showed up. As expected, you're not dead. I used so many explosive tags, and yet you're still alive. You're really starting to piss me off. But since you refuse to die easily, I'll make sure you die slowly and painfully. I'll torture you until you wish you were dead. My thunder blades are ready to feast on blood. This time, you won't escape." Turning to his two subordinates, Riga barked, "You two, use the hidden mist jutsu to cover the area." The two Chunin exchanged glances and then looked down at Yoru, whose expression remained calm. Their throats tightened as they felt the intense clash of auras between Yoru and Riga. The oppressive killing intent seemed to pierce their very souls, leaving them chilled to the bone. How is this possible? He's just a Gainian, just a kid. How can his presence rival Big Brother Riga's? What kind of monster is he? It feels like his strength isn't any weaker than Big Brother Riga's. One of them muttered. As they spoke, the two Chunin quickly formed hand seals. Ninjutsu, hidden mist jutsu. In an instant, dense fog engulfed the area for hundreds of meters. The already suffocating killing intent became even more terrifying, amplified by the heavy mist surrounding them. Chapter 69. The two Chunin worked together to perform the hidden mist jutsu, creating a fog that was not only denser but also covered a larger area than usual. Riga chuckled, as shinobi of the hidden mist village, moving freely in the fog is second nature to us. He laughed heartily, but before he could finish savoring his boast, a cold voice suddenly echoed near his ear. "Interesting. This technique doesn't restrict me either." Crackle. Squelch. Ah. Ah. Riga's eyes widened as he caught a glimpse of a golden flash streaking past. Before he could react, the sound of crackling lightning and the anguished screams of his two subordinates reverberated through the mist. Riga's body tensed. Damn it, this guy is too fast. Sensing imminent danger, Riga leaped backward several steps, putting distance between himself and his two fallen subordinates. Amidst the thick mist, Yoru stood calmly, his gaze fixed in Riga's direction. At Yoru's feet lay the lifeless bodies of the two Chunin from the hidden mist village, pools of blood spreading beneath them. The kill had been instantaneous, terrifyingly so. In a split second, Yoru had slain the two Chunin. They hadn't even had a chance to struggle. The moment the kunai pierced their bodies, a surge of devastating electricity coursed through them, obliterating any trace of life. A kunai infused with lightning was far more lethal than a simple stab. Riga was shaken. Although he had already known Yoru was strong, he hadn't expected this level of strength. To think he could cover that much distance. This guy. He moved dozens of meters in an instant, so fast I couldn't even react. His body flickered jutsu. It's too quick. Could he be the disciple of the Yellow Flash? Memories of the Third Shinobi World War flooded Riga's mind, recalling the legendary Yellow Flash, an existence so fearsome that encountering him justified abandoning a mission. Yoru's speed just now had surpassed that of even elite Jonin, accompanied by flashes of golden lightning. It was so dazzling that Riga couldn't help but mistake Yoru for one of Minato Namikage's disciples. He even wondered if Yoru had used the Flying Thunder God Jutsu. After all, Yoru's speed was so overwhelming that it seemed impossible to track with the naked eye. As a master of lightning style and someone skilled in speed, Riga prided himself on his agility. Yet Yoru's movements were so fast that Riga couldn't even keep up, making his assumption that Yoru was Minato's disciple understandable. But after his initial shock came fury. "You bastard. Don't think killing two Chunin makes you invincible. The gap between Chunin and Jonin is as vast as heaven and earth. Lightning style, feast of lightning. Riga crossed his two thunder blades and stabbed them into the ground. Instantly, dozens of ferocious lightning bolts erupted outward. Crack. Boom. Boom. The mist was split apart by the serpentine lightning bolts, which streaked toward Yorua with terrifying speed. In the blink of an eye, the lightning surrounded him. Lightning style, thunder net. Crackle. Boom. 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 Yorua calmly clasped his hands together. Golden lightning surged around him, forming an impenetrable golden lightning barrier. In an instant, the blue lightning collided violently with Yorua's golden barrier. The immense force tore apart everything in the vicinity. Void. Around Yorua, the ground had caved in, rocks scattered in chaos, and the stones struck by the lightning were pulverized into fine dust. A white light, as brilliant as the sun, illuminated the surroundings, making it as bright as day. The shock wave from the explosion created a fierce gale, lifting clouds of dust and forming a terrifying tornado. Sakura, who had evacuated Tazuna and Inari hundreds of meters away, shielded her eyes from the swirling sandstorm. Looking at the towering tornado of wind and dust in the distance, Sakura's face was filled with concern. This is terrifying. Is this the level of jutsu a Jonin can use? Do you think Yorua can hold out? Even at a distance of hundreds of meters from Yorua, the storm's intensity was strong enough to mess up Sakura's hair and make her clothes flutter noisily in the wind. Sakura was deeply worried about Yorua. Inari, too, clenched his fists tightly, his heart racing as he stared intently at the distant figure of Yorua. This is like a battle between gods. Shinobi are truly terrifying. Yorua is so young, yet he possesses such overwhelming power. Tazuna murmured in awe. The battle between Yorua and Riga had left a lasting impression on Tazuna, who had never witnessed ninjutsu before. To her, the clash between the two wasn't something humans should be capable of. Back on the battlefield, dozens of lightning arcs as thick as an arm continuously bombarded the protective barrier Yorua had created. The destructive force was immense. Yet, even after the barrage of lightning ended, the golden barrier remained completely unshaken. This was Yorua's self-developed defensive jutsu based on lightning style, lightning net. Even Kakashi had marveled at the strength of this jutsu, deeming it an absolute S-rank jutsu. Mastering such a jutsu required an exceptional understanding of lightning style and precise control over it. Without these, the jutsu could lead to catastrophic consequences. After learning the principle behind the jutsu, Kakashi had shaken his head and admitted that even he couldn't execute it. This was a jutsu that only Yorua could use because even a slight mistake would lead to the user being consumed by it. Despite its immense defensive power, it came with an equally immense risk, requiring a colossal amount of chakra to activate. Any misstep could result in the user being obliterated. It was, without a doubt, a dangerous forbidden jutsu. If not for seeing how skillfully Yorua wielded it, Kakashi would have never allowed him to use this jutsu in battle. It was a jutsu that deserved to be sealed away in the book of forbidden jutsu. Lightning net was even more dangerous than the lightning cutter, and by several magnitudes. As the arcs of lightning finally ceased, Riga looked confidently in Yorua's direction, his face smug. Ha ha ha, kid, you should have regretted not dying earlier. Now you're probably nothing more than shredded meat. Riga had great faith in the power of his thunder blades. His lightning style, Feast of Lightning, was indeed extremely powerful, easily classified as an A-rank jutsu. As the dust settled, Riga grinned, expecting to see Yorua's remains scattered across the battlefield. But what he saw instead wiped the smile from his face. A golden barrier, shimmering with radiant light, stood intact in the distance. The ground around the barrier had completely collapsed. The terrain, devastated by the relentless lightning strikes, was fractured like a spiderweb extending dozens of meters. All the surrounding vegetation had been incinerated into charcoal. The earth had turned black, still emitting smoke from the heat. But Riga paid no attention to the destruction. His gaze was fixated on the golden barrier, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief. Damn it. It's that jutsu again. You used it to survive the earlier explosion, didn't you? What kind of jutsu is this? How can it even block my lightning style? Riga couldn't believe it. Someone had actually withstood his lightning style. And that someone was just a Gainin. Chapter 70. After the attack subsided, the golden barrier gradually disappeared, revealing Yorua within. Despite enduring the terrifying lightning barrage earlier, Yorua remained completely unharmed. Not a single scratch marred his body, and even his clothes were spotless. Yorua calmly looked at Riga in the distance and said, "So, the thunder blades are only this much?" Yorua's taunt enraged. "Riga, you little brat. Don't think that just because you blocked one feast of lightning, you've seen the full power of the thunder blades. I'll make you understand the might of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and the true power of the thunder blades." With that, Riga charged toward Yorua, the thunder blades in his hands crackling with blue lightning. To an average shinobi, his speed would be overwhelming, But to Yorua, it was simply too slow. Yorua stood unfazed, watching Riga close in without the slightest hint of panic, even though his opponent was a member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, a top-tier Jonin. In an instant, the two clashed. Riga swung the thunder blades, arcs of lightning dancing along their edges. Yorua, wielding only a simple kunai, engaged him head-on. Clang! 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 Screech! Crack! Crack! In their intense close-quarters combat, the blue lightning of Riga's thunder blades clashed repeatedly with the golden lightning emanating from Yorua's kunai. Sparks flew as the metal clashed. Golden and blue lightning arcs intertwined, colliding violently as the two engaged in an electrifying duel. After several minutes of taijutsu exchanges, Riga was horrified to realize that Yorua's taijutsu was on par with his own. Not only that, but Yorua's agility and strength far exceeded his. The only reason Riga had lasted this long was due to his superior combat experience. Yet, to his disbelief, Yorua's combat techniques were improving rapidly during their fight. Initially, Yorua had relied solely on his raw physical strength to battle Riga. But now, his combat skills had grown to match Riga's. It was terrifying. If this continued, the battle would undoubtedly turn against him. However, Riga had no idea how to disengage from Yorua. Yorua's relentless pressure gave him no room to retreat or create distance. What kind of monster is this kid? How can someone so young have such terrifying power? And his combat skills? They're improving way too fast. If this drags on, I'm definitely going to lose. I have to find a way to create distance and use ninjutsu to end this fight. Yorua, expressionless, continued to exchange blows with Riga. This battle had been a tremendous learning experience for him. After all, Riga was one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the Mist, known for their exceptional taijutsu. The 7 ninja swordsmen relied heavily on their blades, which required advanced taijutsu to wield effectively. Thus, their taijutsu prowess was nothing to scoff at. However, Yorua's ability to learn was extraordinary. Within just a few minutes of battle, he had mastered Riga's taijutsu techniques. At this point, Yorua's combat skills were no less refined than Riga's. And with his superior strength, speed, and reflexes, Yorua had pushed Riga into a corner. After a few more minutes of combat, Riga gritted his teeth and unleashed a technique, lightning style, thunder sphere. At the exact moment when the thunder blades clashed with Yorua's kunai, Riga activated his lightning style jutsu. In an instant, a lightning sphere formed and shot toward Yorua's face. Yorua reacted with lightning speed, vanishing from the path of the attack in an instant. Boom! The lightning sphere missed Yorua and struck a boulder about 10 meters behind him. The massive rock, over a meter tall, was instantly blasted into fragments. The destructive power was terrifying. Taking advantage of this brief moment, Riga created some distance between himself and Yorua. When Yorua raised his gaze toward Riga, the latter had already begun forming a jutsu. Lightning style, tornado of the thunder dragon. Sizzle. Roar. In an instant, a lightning dragon over 10 meters long materialized in front of Riga. The dragon roared as it surged toward Yorua at incredible speed. Yorua's eyes narrowed slightly, and he clasped his hands together once more. Wind style, storm dragon tornado. With just a single hand sign, without even forming additional seals, Yorua unleashed a knee-rank wind style jutsu. Buzz. Roar. A storm dragon materialized behind Yorua, flying over his head and rushing toward Riga's lightning dragon. Its speed was equally astonishing. In the blink of an eye, the two dragons clashed in the space between their users. Boom. 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 Crash. 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 After several collisions, the storm dragon opened its massive jaws and bit down on the lightning dragon, causing it to explode. The resulting shockwave shattered the ground within dozens of meters, leaving countless cracks and ravines that tore the terrain apart. Even after destroying the lightning dragon, the storm dragon still carried residual power, almost as if it had a soul of its own, as it charged toward Riga in the distance. Riga's eyes widened in disbelief. How is this possible? He can use wind style? And his wind style is this powerful? Riga had spent days observing Yorua, only ever noticing him train with lightning style. He never imagined Yorua could use wind style as well. And both wind and lightning styles were notoriously difficult to master. How could Yorua, after mastering lightning style, also excel in wind style? He was still just a geinin. Yet based on the power Yorua had displayed, calling him a geinin was an insult to Jonin. Boom. The storm dragon left no time for Riga to marvel. In an instant, it engulfed him, its entire body slamming into the spot where he stood. The overwhelming force created a massive crater over 10 meters wide at Riga's location. As the storm dispersed, it generated winds strong enough to snap trees within hundreds of meters. Yorua turned his gaze to another direction. As expected of a Jonin, Your survival instincts are impressive," he said with a slight smile. At this point, Riga's clothes were tattered, and his body was riddled with cuts from wind blades. Blood oozed from his wounds, though none were fatal. However, Riga looked completely disheveled, a far cry from the imposing image of one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist and an elite Jonin. Riga stared at Yorua with a heavy expression, panting heavily. His hands trembled as they gripped the thunder blades. A monster. This guy is a monster. Is he really a Gainin? What kind of monster has Hidden Leaf Village produced? If this continues, I'm going to die. By now, Riga knew he was no match for Yorua. At the start of the fight, Yorua had seemed inexperienced in battle. But now, Riga felt utterly suppressed in every aspect by Yorua. Especially Yorua's speed, it was overwhelmingly fast, far beyond his own. Riga's speed, boosted by his expertise in lightning style, was already much faster than that of an average Jonin. Yet Yorua was even faster, so much so that Riga's eyes could barely keep up with him. It was terrifying. Riga believed that Yorua could easily kill him and was merely toying with him at this point. While Riga felt a surge of anger, he had to admit that Yorua was stronger and capable of killing him. What Riga didn't know was that Yorua had previously been uncertain about killing a Jonin. Yorua had never defeated a Jonin before. Kakashi and Zabuza had never fought him with their full strength, leading Yorua to believe they were holding back. As a result, he doubted his own ability to defeat a Jonin. Even now, Yorua suspected that Riga still had some hidden techniques up his sleeve. Thus, Yorua was conserving his strength and chakra, waiting for Riga to unleash his trump card. However, Riga had nothing left, save for a self-destructive jutsu. Yorua's caution only made Riga feel humiliated, as if Yorua were mocking him. Chapter 71. You still hiding something? Come on, show me what makes the 7 ninja swordsmen so formidable. Yorua said calmly. Riga's brows furrowed tightly upon hearing those words. You brat, who do you think you're insulting? Thunderblade art, falling thunder. Crack. Sizzle. Enraged by Yorua's taunt, Riga instantly summoned all his remaining chakra, releasing his most powerful offensive jutsu. In an instant, 2 lightning arcs, each as thick as a man's arm, coiled like serpents as they surged toward Yorua. This is much stronger than his earlier lightning banquet attack. Yorua noted. But if this is all he's got, it's not enough to kill me. The 2 lightning serpents charged at Yorua from both sides. Clap. Yorua clapped his hands together. Let's see how my lightning style compares. Lightning style, meteor strike. Sizzle. Golden lightning erupted violently from Yorua's body, crackling with ferocious energy. The lightning quickly coalesced into dozens of golden projectiles that shot toward Riga. The golden lightning bolts instantly shattered Riga's lightning serpents, reducing them to mere specks of light without any resistance. Before Riga could even react, countless golden bolts rained down upon him. Boom. 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 In an instant, a violent explosion erupted where Riga stood. Dust and debris filled the air as shockwaves rippled outward, turning night into day with the brilliance of the golden lightning. The immense power shook the surrounding earth, causing a minor earthquake. The apocalyptic scene was overwhelming, as though the world itself was ending. Even hundreds of meters away, Sakura and her group struggled to stay on their feet. Sakura was left in stunned silence. This is Yorua's power? It's terrifying. How is he really just 12 years old? Sakura couldn't believe that such destructive power belonged to a 12-year-old boy. In her mind, Yorua's strength had far surpassed Kakashi's. After all, she had never seen Kakashi unleash such a wide-scale, devastating jutsu before. Eventually, the dust settled. Before Yorua lay a massive crater, over 100 meters wide and more than 10 meters deep. The soil within had been scorched black by lightning, still emitting wisps of smoke. Walking to the edge of the crater, Yorua looked down at Riga's charred and shattered body, as well as the 2 thunder blades lying nearby. He was stunned. From the edge of the crater, he slowly stepped toward its center. No way. Was that really Riga? Dead? Yorua couldn't comprehend it. This was supposed to be one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. And yet, Riga had been killed by just one of his jutsu. His body was completely reduced to charcoal. Could this Riga have been a fake? Yorua refused to believe that Riga's abilities were so limited. He had been waiting for Riga to unleash his ultimate move. Who would have thought that a casually released lightning-style jutsu would kill him? Picking up the 2 thunder blades lying on the ground, Yorua examined them. These swords. They're so ugly. Yorua had originally thought that the 7 ninja swordsmen's strength was largely due to the unique abilities of their blades. But now that he held them in his hands, he realized the swords didn't live up to their reputation. It didn't suit his aesthetic. The strange, awkward shape of the blades made him lose any desire to keep them as collectibles. Let's hold on to them for now. Perhaps one day, When we re-establish relations with Hidden Mist Village, I can return these and earn some goodwill. For now, however, Hidden Mist Village remained closed off to outsiders, so there was no way to return the swords even if he wanted to. With Yorua's current strength, the Thunder Blades held no value for him. Besides, their design didn't appeal to him. If it were Sasuke's Kusanagi sword, now that was something he'd appreciate. Let's just seal them away for now. Taking a sealing scroll from his ninja tool pouch, Yorua prepared to store the blades. This was a basic sealing scroll he'd recently learned to use while training with Kakashi. It worked just like the scroll Stanton used to store her ninja tools. After securing the Thunder Blades, Yorua turned his attention back to Riga's charred remains, which had broken into pieces and were scattered around the crater. One of the 7 ninja swordsmen. A once renowned Jonin, and this is how it ends? What a pity. It's just so undignified. Considering he often conducted funerals for others, I suppose I'll be the one to send him off on his final journey. Riga was the first Jonin, and an elite one at that, Yorua had ever killed. Yet, Yorua didn't feel any joy. Instead, he felt a tinge of disappointment. In his mind, Riga must have had a trump card he never got the chance to use. Yorua had expected Riga to withstand his jutsu or at least have the ability to dodge it. But not only did Riga fail to block the attack, he couldn't even react in time. Lightning style, Meteor Strike was an A-rank jutsu Yorua had personally developed. This was the first time he had used it in actual combat, and he hadn't expected it to kill Riga outright. Even Yorua was surprised that the jutsu was capable of taking down an elite Jonin. While it was true that Naruto eventually defeated Riga in the original story, that was partly due to his protagonist status. If Naruto hadn't tapped into the Nine Tails power, defeating Riga would have been nearly impossible. And in that scenario, Riga's mental state had been compromised due to Ranmaaru's influence. But the Riga Yorua faced now was unaffected by such distractions, a fully competent elite Jonin. Yorua himself couldn't believe he had reached a level where he could kill an elite Jonin. Looking at Riga's remains, Yorua shook his head, feeling regretful. He lamented that Riga hadn't unleashed his full potential. Earth style, sand burial. Yorua formed hand seals and pressed his hands to the ground. Immediately, the earth shifted as large amounts of soil transformed into sand. The sand gradually engulfed Riga's remains, forming a grave mound. In front of the grave, a stone marker rose from the ground. Yorua walked up to it and engraved Riga's name onto the stone with his hand. Despite having defeated an elite Jonin, Yorua felt no joy. Instead, he questioned his own strength. Why had Riga fallen so easily? He doubted whether the man he killed was truly Riga. Until now, Yorua had believed his strength was comparable to an average Jonin, far from the level of an elite Jonin. So when he managed to kill Riga with a single jutsu, and with less than a tenth of his chakra depleted, he was left stunned. It felt surreal, almost like a dream. Regardless, the fact that Riga was dead confirmed that Yorua's strength had already reached the level of an elite Jonin. This was a significant milestone. After all, in theory, every elite Jonin from a village was qualified to become a Kage. Every Kage was chosen from the ranks of elite Jonin. Even Naruto had to spend time advancing to the rank of Jonin before he could succeed Kakashi as the 7th Hokage. Of course, for now, Yorua was still officially a Genin. In a few months, the Chunin exams would be held, and that might be Yorua's chance to advance to Chunin. Chapter 72. Seeing the distant battle come to an abrupt halt and Yorua disappear, Sakura assumed something bad had happened to him. Clenching her teeth, she sprinted toward the battlefield. Soon, she arrived at the edge of a massive crater. Staring at the giant pit, about 100 meters wide, Sakura was utterly stunned. Did Yorua create this with his jutsu? It's terrifying. Sakura couldn't begin to comprehend the sheer power required to create such destruction. This was far beyond anything she considered possible. The crater was even larger than the one caused by thousands of explosive tags going off simultaneously. Still, Sakura didn't dwell on it for long. She looked down into the crater and saw Yorua standing at its center. Without hesitation, she rushed toward him. When she reached his side, she found Yorua standing in front of a grave. Noticing the name engraved on the tombstone, Sakura let out a sigh of relief. So, Kurisuke Riga is dead? She turned to Yorua. Yorua nodded calmly. Still worried moments earlier, Sakura now smiled and said, Yorua, you're amazing. Even a Jonin is no match for you. However, Yorua showed no trace of joy. Instead, he turned and began to walk away. Sakura was puzzled. You won the fight. Why does he look so unhappy? Boys are so strange. She glanced at Kurisuke Riga's grave one last time before chasing after Yorua. Once they returned to the surface, Yorua looked up at the moon in the sky. Frowning, he muttered, it's already nighttime. I wonder how Kakashi-sensei is doing. I need to go assist him. He turned to Sakura. Sakura, go bring Aunt Tsunami and Inari here. We'll go together to support Kakashi-sensei. I can't leave you all here alone, it's too dangerous. Sakura nodded. Got it. Although she wanted to ask how Yoru had grown so powerful in such a short time, now clearly wasn't the right moment. After fetching Tsunami and Inari, the group of four headed toward the construction site of the Great Bridge. It took them a while, but they finally arrived at the scene. There, they witnessed Kakashi battling Zabuza. At the same time, Yoru's gaze shifted toward another part of the battlefield, where a surge of sinister chakra made his expression tense. That evil chakra. Could it be Naruto losing control? Yoru looked in Naruto's direction. In the darkness, the red chakra stood out, glaring and menacing. Kakashi, mid-battle with Zabuza, caught sight of Yoru and exhaled in relief. As expected, this kid's strength has already surpassed that of a Jonin. He's probably as surprised by his own abilities as I am. In Kakashi's eyes, Yoru's cautious personality and Shikamaru-like lack of enthusiasm for most things held him back from fully understanding his own strength. During their training sessions, Kakashi had already assessed Yoru's abilities to be well beyond those of a Jonin. In a direct confrontation, Kakashi knew he wouldn't stand a chance against him. But Yoru himself refused to believe it. To Yoru, the title of Jonin still seemed like an insurmountable goal. True, Jonin were considered the pinnacle of a village's combat strength, but that didn't mean they were invincible. This was something Yoru had yet to grasp. When Zabuza mentioned that Kurisuke Riga had gone to ambush Yoru, Kakashi was worried despite his faith in Yoru's abilities. Though Yoru's raw strength had already surpassed that of a Jonin, his lack of real combat experience remained a significant weakness. Who knew if Kurisuke Riga might resort to underhanded tactics? After all, ninjas were notorious for using any despicable or shameless means necessary to complete a mission. In this regard, Yoru lacked experience. Many top-level shinobi in the ninja world had been assassinated, often by individuals weaker than them, using covert and dishonorable methods. This was precisely what worried Kakashi. Now that Yoru was here, it meant Kurisuke Riga had failed. Yoru, hurry over to Naruto's side, something's happening over there. Kakashi called out to Yoru. Yoru glanced at Kakashi, then turned to Sakura and said, protect them. I'm going to check it out. Sakura knew she couldn't contribute much, so she nodded. Don't worry, I'll make sure they're safe. Without another word, Yoru turned and sprinted toward Naruto's location. Meanwhile, Zabuza, who was engaged in combat with Kakashi, widened his eyes when he saw Yoru. How is that kid here? What the hell is Kurisuke Riga doing? After unleashing a jutsu, Kakashi said calmly, Zabuza, things aren't as you imagined. My student is far stronger than you think. It seems even the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist can't defeat him. Zabuza frowned deeply. Yoru's presence was entirely unexpected. To Zabuza, no matter how talented Yoru might be, he was just a genin, a mere rookie who had just earned the rank. There was no way he could possibly defeat Kurisuke Riga, a skilled elite Jonin. Not to mention, Riga had brought along 2 Chunin as backup. Zabuza couldn't fathom how Riga could have lost. But regardless of his disbelief, Yoru's presence here meant Riga had failed. Zabuza scowled in frustration. That guy sure talks big. Saying he wouldn't even need 10 minutes to kill that kid. Kurisuke Riga is completely unreliable. Turning his attention back to Kakashi, Zabuza sneered coldly. I don't know why Riga didn't stop that brat, but if that Nine-Tails kid has gone berserk, it'll be a major problem for you, Kakashi. Kakashi glanced toward the distant surge of crimson chakra, his brows furrowing. This was the most troublesome issue at the moment. Now that Yoru had arrived, the two of them could easily take down Zabuza together. But with Naruto losing control, handling the situation would be far more difficult. Kakashi vividly remembered the last time Naruto went berserk as a child. The fallout was catastrophic for the Anbu. If not for the third Hokage deploying the entire sealing team, along with the Anbu and several Jonin from the village, Naruto might have destroyed the entire village. At the time, the third Hokage had even considered using the dead demon-consuming seal as a last resort. Kakashi knew very well that if Naruto lost all reason and allowed the Nine-Tails to completely take over, it would be beyond his ability to contain. He didn't want Yoru heading to Naruto's side, it was far too dangerous. But with Zabuza keeping him occupied, Kakashi couldn't break free. Worry clouded his thoughts. Yoru, you'd better be careful, if anything happens to you, how will I face Toichi? Kakashi couldn't bear the thought of Yoru suffering any harm here. After all, he had confidently promised back then that he would protect Yoru while taking him out on missions. Here we go. Yoru muttered as he quickly reached Naruto's location. By now, Naruto's entire body was wrapped in the tailed beast cloak, and a tail had already emerged behind him. A tail has already formed. This is bad. In his tailless state, Naruto's strength was roughly at the level of a Jonin. But once a tail appeared, his strength soared to that of an elite Jonin. Of course, this referred to raw destructive power. When it came to combat experience, both he and the Nine Tails still fell short of seasoned Jonin. However, the sheer power Naruto was exhibiting at this moment was something most ordinary Jonin couldn't hope to withstand. Only elite Jonin like Kakashi, who had far superior combat experience, could suppress such strength. Now, with Naruto in his one-tail form, the chakra emanating from him was enormous, so overwhelming that the pressure felt even more terrifying than that of a Kage-level shinobi. This wasn't Naruto's chakra. It was the Nine Tails chakra. Even Yoru, as composed as he usually was, couldn't help but feel shocked. He knew his own chakra reserves were already larger than Kakashi's. After days of continuous growth, Yoru's chakra levels had reached the Kage level. But the amount of chakra Naruto was releasing now made Yoru feel utterly outclassed. No wonder the Nine Tails is considered the strongest of the nine-tailed beasts, with the largest reserves of chakra. Yoru thought to himself, impressed. If we don't stop Naruto soon and he manifests more tails, this situation could spiral out of control. A Jinchuriki going berserk outside the village was not only a blow to Hidden Leaf Village's reputation but would become an even greater embarrassment if they failed to contain him. Despite the immense threat Naruto posed right now, Yoru had no choice but to intervene. Sasuke was already lying on the ground, covered in blood. Even Haku, who was nearby, was paralyzed by the overwhelming pressure of Naruto's chakra, unable to move. Chapter 73. This was Yoru's first time seeing Haku, who was wearing an Anbu mask. When Haku noticed Yoru's arrival, he somehow mustered the courage to shout, disregarding Naruto's attention, "Don't come any closer." His voice, however, only provoked the already unstable and irrational Naruto. Roar! A deafening roar erupted from Naruto, causing the surrounding air to tremble. That sound. It seems he's about to completely lose his sanity. Yoru remarked calmly. If I'd known, I should have learned more sealing techniques from Kakashi-sensei. None of the ones I know are suitable for dealing with tailed beasts. Yoru sighed with a hint of helplessness. If only he had learned the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques, he could have forced the Nine Tails chakra back into Naruto's body by now. Roar! Another fierce roar echoed as Naruto charged toward Haku. The tailed beast cloak enveloping Naruto made the Nine Tails chakra almost tangible. The crimson chakra exuded a sinister and malevolent aura. Even Yoru could feel the intense threat emanating from it. This isn't good. No killing the innocent. Yoru muttered as he saw Naruto rushing toward Haku. Remembering parts of the story, Yoru knew that Haku had never killed indiscriminately. He was, in fact, an impeccably good-hearted person. While Yoru disliked meddling, he wasn't about to let Naruto take Haku's life. Boom. Rumble. Before Yoru finished speaking, he vanished from his spot, reappearing in front of Haku. With a punch, he intercepted Naruto's claws. The clash caused a massive surge of energy that rippled outward. The ground beneath them crumbled and shattered instantly. Naruto, cloaked in the crimson aura of a tailed beast, faced off against Yoru, whose body was covered by a golden cloak formed by his lightning net. Indeed, close combat with Naruto in this state required caution. The tailed beast cloak had corrosive properties. However, Yoru's lightning net provided formidable protection. After exchanging a few heavy blows with Naruto, Yoru's expression grew serious. His power has grown so much after transforming into this state. He's actually putting some pressure on me. Haku, standing behind Yoru, was utterly stunned. Yoru was engaging in close combat with this transformed Naruto. Just moments ago, Haku had been swatted away by Naruto with a single strike, sent flying dozens of meters. The sheer strength behind that blow was etched into his memory. It far surpassed Zabuza's power. Yet Yoru was not only able to trade blows with Naruto but was doing so without yielding an inch. What is that golden cloak he's wearing? Haku couldn't comprehend the lightning net surrounding Yoru. He could tell that Yoru's golden cloak served a purpose similar to Naruto's tailed beast cloak. But unlike Naruto's sinister and malevolent aura, Yoru's cloak radiated warmth, vitality, and vibrant energy. After several exchanges, Yoru thought to himself, if I keep fighting like this, my stamina and chakra will be depleted first. I need to find a way to bring Naruto back to his senses. Naruto, as a Jinchuriki, was already dangerous in this state. With the Nine Tails chakra leaking out, there was a risk that the seal might break entirely if things went awry. Yoru had no intention of letting that happen. He could still manage Naruto in his current state, but if the Nine Tails fully emerged, Yoru doubted he had the power to subdue it. With a swift roundhouse kick enhanced by the lightning net, Yoru aimed to deliver a strike with exceptional speed, and equally devastating power. A terrifying force erupted. Boom. Rumble. The immense power sent Naruto flying hundreds of meters like a cannonball, crashing into the surface of the sea. The impact churned up waves dozens of meters high. Yoruba wasn't worried about injuring Naruto. At this point, Naruto's body was completely under the control of the Nine Tails chakra. His physical form possessed the Nine Tails' rapid healing abilities. Even if you were injured, the chakra would quickly repair the damage. After sending Naruto flying, Yoruba clasped his hands together. Water style, Water Dragon Bullet Jutsu. Leaping off the bridge, Yoruba performed hand seals midair and unleashed the Water Dragon Bullet. Before his feet even touched the sea, a massive water dragon surged out from the ocean ahead of him, soaring into the sky. Roar! The colossal water dragon, hundreds of meters long, roared as it ascended. Its roar echoed across the heavens, likely audible for several kilometers. Kakashi, who was battling Zabuza in the distance, noticed the enormous water dragon soaring skyward. Even Kakashi was stunned. Is that Yoruba's Water Dragon Bullet Jutsu? It's never been this terrifying before. It's over 300 meters long. Ordinary water dragon bullets were usually only a few dozen meters at most. Even the ones Yoruba had unleashed before, though powerful, barely reached 100 meters. But this time, the water dragon was over 300 meters in length. What was even more astonishing was that Yoruba's water dragon wasn't just massive, it had taken on an exceptionally lifelike, fully formed dragon shape. It almost seemed alive, soaring and twisting in the sky. Even Zabuza was shaken. What kind of monster is this kid? No wonder Kurasuke failed. This brat is an absolute freak. What's been going on with Hidden Leaf Village lately? One after another, these monster-like kids keep popping up. The other monster Zabuza referred to was, of course, Naruto. Even though he knew Naruto was a Jinchuriki, he was still astounded by the overwhelming chakra Naruto unleashed in his rampage. The Nine Tails chakra was unlike that of any other tailed beast. Not only did it have an unparalleled volume, but it also exuded an overwhelming malice. Even someone as ruthless as Zabuza couldn't help but feel a chill when faced with the sheer malevolence radiating from Naruto's chakra. Now Yoruba had appeared, and he was far stronger than when he had fought Zabuza just days earlier. It had only been a little over 10 days. The speed of Yoruba's growth was unbelievable. Zabuza now understood why Kurasuke hadn't been able to kill Yoruba. Just from the sheer scale of Yoruba's Water Dragon Bullet Jutsu, Zabuza was convinced that Yoruba's strength had already reached the level of a Jonin. And not just an ordinary Jonin, a standard, well-rounded one. Possibly even an elite Jonin. In truth, the power Yoruba displayed with his ninjutsu already surpassed many Kage-level ninjas. But as a ninja, strength wasn't judged solely by the destructive power of one's techniques. Yoruba was only 12 years old, still a Genin. Zabuza doubted that Yoruba had the combat experience to match a Kage-level ninja. Considering him an elite Jonin was already an extremely generous estimation. Kakashi, meanwhile, cast a worried glance at Naruto, who had fallen into the sea. The malice radiating from Naruto's chakra worried him. It seemed as though the seal might break entirely, causing Naruto to lose all control. As Hidden Leaf Village's Jinchuriki, if Naruto were to lose control here and the Nine Tails broke free, it would be a massive blow to Hidden Leaf Village's reputation. Moreover, Hidden Leaf Village would lose one of its strategic assets. If the Nine Tails broke the seal, Naruto would become nothing more than its puppet. If the Nine Tails then used Naruto to attack other villages, it would undoubtedly spark a war. That was the worst-case scenario. Kakashi's gaze shifted to Yoruba, who was standing on the surface of the sea. The sea breeze rustled Yoruba's clothes as he stood there. Above him, the water dragon coiled like a living creature, refusing to dissipate. It hovered protectively around Yoruba, its two massive golden eyes glowing as they locked onto Naruto in the distance. Behind Naruto, the second tail of his tailed beast cloak was slowly forming. It was clear that the Nine Tails within Naruto had also sensed the extraordinary nature of the massive water dragon. Chapter 74 Yoruba's earlier whip-like kick had completely enraged the Nine Tails. What infuriated it even more was the life-filled aura emanating from Yoruba, reminiscent of the first Hokage, the being the Nine Tails despised most. Back in the day, it had been living freely in the wild until the first Hokage inexplicably captured it and sealed it within his wife. That single event led to decades of torment as it was passed from one Jinchuriki to another, enduring endless suffering. Naruto's body was, comparatively, a kinder prison. In the past, when it had been sealed within Uzumaki Mido and Uzumaki Kushina, it wasn't just confined, it had been physically pinned to massive rocks, enduring all sorts of punitive agony. Even as a tailed beast, the excruciating pain from being nearly skinned alive several times was something it could never forget. The hatred it harbored for the first Hokage, the root cause of its plight, was etched deeply into its memory. It despised and loathed the first Hokage more than anyone. Yoruba stood facing Naruto, watching him intently. He could sense the nine-tails chakra within Naruto surging wildly. The nine-tails chakra is growing stronger and stronger. It seems the seal is breaking. If I don't snap Naruto out of it quickly, Hidden Leaf Village is going to suffer a major embarrassment. As a ninja of Hidden Leaf Village, Yoruba knew it was his responsibility to clean up this mess. Without wasting another moment, Yoruba formed hand seals once more. Lightning style, thunder roar. Sizzle. Roar. In an instant, a golden lightning dragon materialized before Yoruba. Its body crackled with arcs of electricity, buzzing and humming with energy. As Yoruba directed his chakra, the golden lightning dragon plunged into the nearby water dragon. The previously translucent water dragon's body transformed, radiating a dazzling golden light as the power of lightning infused it. In the darkness of the night, the dragon now shone like the sun, illuminating its surroundings. This spectacle left everyone utterly stunned. The massive water dragon, now combined with lightning, seemed like a genuine dragon, a colossal, radiant creature roaring in the skies. If this wasn't a real dragon, then what was? In truth, this was simply Yoruba combining water style and lightning style techniques. However, because Yoruba's chakra was derived from natural energy and uniquely potent, the ninjutsu he created seemed to develop a consciousness of its own. Yoruba was unaware of this, much like how the first Hokage's wood golem jutsu seemed to possess a will of its own. But the sheer scale of Yoruba's water dragon was astonishing. To put it into perspective, the wood golem from the first Hokage's technique was only a few dozen meters tall. Even the Great Buddha from the Deep Forest Bloom technique reached a height of just 300 meters. Yet, Yoruba's water dragon, created solely with water style, was already 300 meters in length. This was akin to Yoruba summoning a colossal creature akin to a summoning beast entirely on his own. Much like how the first Hokage didn't need summoning beasts and relied solely on his wood golem, Yoruba was unknowingly capable of creating a similar effect. Of course, Yoruba himself was oblivious to this. He was still preoccupied with finding a summoning beast that suited him. Standing on the surface of the sea, Yoruba observed Naruto on the other side. The nine-tails chakra surrounding Naruto was intensifying. Yoruba knew he couldn't delay any longer. Without hesitation, he directed the lightning-infused water dragon toward Naruto. Roar. The massive lightning water dragon moved. Its enormous body swept through the sky, generating a terrifying hurricane in its wake. The storm churned up waves several meters high on the ocean's surface. Despite its massive size, the water dragon's speed was astounding, thanks to the addition of lightning-style chakra. In the blink of an eye, the dragon had crossed several. The 100-meter distance was closed in an instant as the enormous dragon slammed into Naruto head-on. Boom. 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 Naruto tried to escape, but the water dragon's speed was too fast, and its massive size made its attack range incredibly wide. Naruto was completely engulfed by the water dragon and dragged into the depths of the ocean. The dragon's gigantic body, being so long, remained visible above the surface for several seconds before fully submerging. As the dragon dove into the sea, it sent up a towering spray of water hundreds of meters high. The surrounding ocean surged with waves dozens of meters tall, heading straight toward the bridge. If left unchecked, the bridge, painstakingly built by the workers of the Land of Waves, would be destroyed by the waves. Yoruba sighed in frustration. This is such a hassle. I can't even go all out without worrying about protecting the bridge. Even as he grumbled, Yoruba clasped his hands together and performed another jutsu. Water style, raging wave wall. Boom. 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 A towering water curtain, several dozen meters high, rose in front of Yoruba and surged toward the incoming waves. The two forces collided in the distance, and the waves immediately dissipated, their energy absorbed by the water wall. Only small ripples, a few meters high, were left behind as the sea calmed. The bridge, fortunately, could withstand these smaller waves. Having dealt with the massive ocean surge, Yoruba activated his sensory abilities and dashed toward Naruto's position. Several kilometers away, Naruto was floating unconscious on the water's surface. Reaching Naruto's side, Yoruba checked his pulse. Good thing he's still alive. The water dragon bullet combined with lightning style packed more of a punch than I expected. It even took out Naruto in his two-tail state. Noticing Naruto's body still trembling, Yoruba deduced what had happened. When the dragon slammed him into the water, the lightning style must have stunned him unconscious. The water style provided the impact, but the lightning style is what really neutralized him. Judging by the results, it was clear the lightning style had played a more significant role. It had directly dispersed the nine-tails chakra. With the chakra scattered, and too little remaining outside, the fourth Hokage's sealing technique had kicked in. The lack of external chakra meant the nine-tails lost its medium, and the seal prevented it from channeling more chakra into Naruto. The only way to regain the chakra would be for Naruto to awaken and voluntarily lift the seal. But with Naruto unconscious, he couldn't possibly do that. Yoru hadn't anticipated resolving the crisis with just one move, but somehow, it worked out. Regardless, the dangers passed. He muttered. Lifting Naruto onto his shoulder, Yoru began walking back toward the bridge. Meanwhile, on Kakashi's side, Zabuza had fled. No surprise there, after witnessing Yoru's battle, would Zabuza really stick around and wait for death? With Naruto neutralized, Yoru could now focus on Hiku. Zabuza knew Hiku stood no chance against Yoru in his current state. If Yoru defeated Hiku and teamed up with Kakashi, Zabuza's fate would be sealed. The power Yoru displayed earlier had earned Zabuza's grudging respect. Zabuza was certain that Yoru's strength had reached the level of an elite Jonin, possibly even Kage tier. He struggled to handle Kakashi alone, there was no way he could take on Yoru as well. If he didn't escape now, he wouldn't get another chance once Yoru arrived. After carrying Naruto back, Yoru glanced at Sakura in the distance. Sakura, I'll leave him to you. He called out. Hearing Yoru's words, Sakura snapped out of her shock and hurried over, her eyes still fixed on Yoru. Though Yoru's earlier battle with Kiromaruga had been intense, it paled in comparison to the overwhelming spectacle of his water-lightning combination jutsu. To Sakura, Yoru seemed monstrously powerful. Thankfully, he was on their side. Sakura couldn't imagine what would happen if someone like Yoru were an enemy, who could possibly defeat him. As she approached, she noted Yoru's calm smile and handsome features, completely free of any hostility. It was impossible to reconcile his serene demeanor with the godlike figure who had wielded such devastating power moments ago. Yoru, indifferent to Sakura's thoughts, gently set Naruto down and said, Sakura, check Naruto for injuries and bandage him up if necessary. I'm going to get Sasuke. With that, he disappeared in a flash. Sakura nodded and began examining Naruto's condition. In her heart, she was grateful that Yoru had joined them on this mission. Without him, they might not have survived. Of course, Sakura didn't know that even without Yoru, they would still have managed to complete the mission. Chapter 75 Yoru approached Sasuke, whose body was riddled with shuriken and kunai, blood soaking his clothes. Yoru's mouth twitched slightly. Such a tsundere. He clearly cares so much, yet he always acts like he hates him. Yoru knew why Sasuke ended up like this, he had shielded Naruto from Hiku's attack. If not for that, Naruto wouldn't have gone berserk. This was their destiny. Even with Yoru's presence, the bond between Naruto and Sasuke hadn't changed. After pulling out the kunai and shuriken from Sasuke's body, Yoru carefully bandaged him up. By the end, Sasuke was wrapped up like a mummy. Good thing you're unconscious right now. If you were awake to see yourself like this, you'd probably die of anger. The prideful Sasuke would never want to be seen in such an embarrassing state. He'd probably even want to kill Yoru out of sheer humiliation. I'm not a professional medical ninja, so this will have to do. With that, Yoru hoisted Sasuke onto his shoulder. After Zabuza fled, Kakashi arrived at Yoru's side. Seeing Sasuke wrapped like a mummy, he couldn't help but ask with some concern, how's Sasuke? He's not in any life-threatening danger, just lost a lot of blood. Kakashi nodded. After checking on Sasuke, Kakashi turned to Yoru and asked, Zabuza mentioned that Rikakirasuke, one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, was sent to intercept you. What happened? Yoru thought for a moment before recounting the battle. Kakashi was surprised but not overly so. Your strength now surpasses mine. Kakashi said with a sigh. Yoru blinked in surprise. That's unlikely, isn't it? Kakashi shook his head. That jutsu you used earlier, I saw it. I doubt even I could block it. Yoru thought about it but remained silent. He wasn't sure if Kakashi's assessment was true. But after defeating Rikakirasuke and knocking out Naruto in his two-tailed state, Yoru figured his current strength had likely reached the level of a Jonin. Still, he didn't feel anything particularly different. Kakashi continued, when we return to Hidden Leaf Village, you should let Sensei Toichi evaluate your progress. That way, he won't keep worrying about you. Yoru chuckled. Sensei Toichi's concern is understandable. After all, going on missions with an elite Jonin like you means we're bound to face situations like today. If I hadn't learned a few jutsu from you over the past few days, I might have died while trying to save Sakura. With your talent, it wouldn't matter who you learned jutsu from, the result would be the same. Not to mention, many of your jutsu are ones you've developed on your own. That jutsu you just used has already surpassed the original version's limits. It's a combination of lightning style and water style, right? That level of jutsu has already exceeded S rank. That kind of jutsu isn't something you learned from me. Kakashi wasn't wrong. Yoru had indeed learned a lot of jutsu from him over the past few days. but nearly every single one of them had been improved by Yoru. In fact, most of the improvements happened during the learning process itself. For example, the Water Dragon Bullet Jutsu, originally just a B rank jutsu, had been modified by Yoru to surpass S rank. It wasn't about the difficulty of learning it anymore, rather, it had. The power of the modified jutsu surpassed S rank. Both its destructive power and scale far exceeded the original version. It was almost as if Yoru had entirely recreated the technique. Of course, the jutsu Yoru improved were essentially usable only by him. That was because every jutsu he enhanced required an enormous amount of chakra to execute. Even if someone had a similarly vast amount of chakra, the jutsu they cast would not achieve the same effects as Yoru's. This was because Yoru's chakra was converted from natural energy, essentially making it sage chakra. Additionally, Yoru's chakra was unique, allowing his techniques to carry a degree of consciousness. For instance, the water dragon from his water dragon bullet jutsu wasn't just a mass of water but a sentient water dragon. It could persist for an extended period without dissipating and attack according to Yoru's commands, similar to the wooden golem jutsu. Just as Hashirama Senju's wood style could only exhibit its true potential in his hands, Yoru's techniques could only fully demonstrate their power when used by him. Kakashi looked at Yoru with a faint smile. Your jutsu have already reached the level of forbidden techniques. What were once simple techniques have become akin to forbidden jutsu after your modifications. I suppose that must be due to the sage chakra in your body. Yoru nodded. I think so too. He didn't deny it. After all, Kakashi was well acquainted with the nature of Yoru's chakra. Of course, Kakashi only understood its type, not the current quantity. In just over 10 days, Yoru's chakra reserves had grown to 10 times that of Kakashi's. Excluding the Nine Tails chakra, Yoru's reserves were now far beyond Naruto's at this stage. Among Kage-level shinobi, Yoru's chakra amount was already at the very top. However, Yoru noticed that his chakra growth had slowed significantly in recent days. As he had suspected, the initial surge in chakra had pushed his physical capabilities close to their limit. Until his body caught up, his chakra reserves would not increase much further. Yoru had anticipated this, so he wasn't particularly surprised. Of course, there was still one way for him to drastically boost his chakra, learning Sage Mode. If he mastered Sage Mode, his chakra reserves could potentially increase tenfold again. However, Yoru was already satisfied with his current reserves and wasn't in a rush to pursue Sage Mode. Seeing Yoru's calm demeanor, Kakashi chuckled. You don't seem surprised at all. In just 10 days, your strength has grown so much. Aren't you even a little shocked? Yoru glanced at Kakashi and smiled. Kakashi-sensei, I've always been aware of my own situation. My only concern before was my lack of combat experience. I'd never fought a true jonin in a life-or-death battle and didn't know how much of my strength I could actually utilize in such a scenario. Now that I've resolved that question, there's nothing left to be surprised about. Kakashi shook his head with a wry smile. Your mindset is far too mature for your age. But that's not a bad thing. Itachi Uchiha was the same, remarkably mature at a young age. At the mention of Itachi, Kakashi glanced at the unconscious Sasuke on Yoru's shoulder. When this kid wakes up and learns about your strength, he'll probably cling to you relentlessly. Yoru smiled helplessly. I just hope Sakura doesn't let it slip. But I doubt she'll grant me that wish. Considering Sakura's obsession with Sasuke, there was no way she'd hide anything if he asked. And Sakura had witnessed everything, how Yoru had killed Rikakirasuke and how he suppressed Naruto's rampage with a single jutsu. Chapter 76. At the same age, if Sasuke learned about Yoru's achievements tonight, he would likely cling to Yoru, demanding to train together. It was clear that in Sakura's eyes, Yoru's strength had already surpassed Kakashi's. While it hadn't been tested, Yoru's current power did indeed make Kakashi feel somewhat inferior. However, Yoru didn't believe himself to be a match for Kakashi. After all, Kakashi was famously known for his even match nature. Against almost anyone, the odds of victory were always 50-50. Many powerful shinobi with devastating jutsu far stronger than Kakashi's had still fallen victim to him in battle. Yoru understood well that the destructive power of jutsu didn't necessarily equate to overall strength. A ninja's true strength depended on combat experience and battle intelligence. And when it came to tactical intelligence, Kakashi was undoubtedly among the very best in the shinobi world. Yoru not only lacked much combat experience but also doubted he was as tactically intelligent as Kakashi. Of course, this was just Yoru being overly cautious. In reality, with his current strength, Kakashi would no longer be a match for him in a fight. This was even more apparent in Sakura's perspective. To her, Yoru's jutsu was astonishingly powerful, and as a young and impressionable shinobi, she naturally judged strength based on what she had seen. At least, She had never witnessed Kakashi using any jutsu of such scale and destructive power. The only notable exception was Kakashi's use of the Chidori against Zabuza earlier. While the Chidori had considerable single-target destructive power, it was clearly far less overwhelming than Yorua's large-scale jutsu. Because of this, Sakura believed that Yorua was already stronger than Kakashi. Once Sasuke heard about this from Sakura, it was inevitable that he would set his sights on Yorua as a new mentor. Sasuke's drive to grow stronger was so intense that he was willing to seek guidance from Orochimaru. Asking Yorua, a fellow teammate, would hardly be an issue. Hearing Yorua's modest response, Kakashi smiled. He was pleased to see that Yorua showed no arrogance despite his incredible growth. What Kakashi had feared most was Yorua becoming overly prideful due to his rapid rise in strength at such a young age. But it turned out Yorua was grounded, which was a rare and valuable trait. Even Kakashi himself had succumbed to arrogance in his youth after achieving some early successes. Back then, Obito Uchiha and Rin Nohara were still alive, and Kakashi's personality was simply a little aloof. When they brought Sasuke back to Naruto's side, Sakura grew worried upon seeing Sasuke covered in bandages. "Yorua, why is Sasuke so badly injured?" she asked anxiously. Yorua sat Sasuke down and reassured her, "Don't worry, it's just injuries from ninja tools. He lost a lot of blood but didn't sustain any critical damage. His life isn't in danger. He just needs some time to rest and recover." Speaking of Sasuke's injuries, it reminded me of something. "Sakura, you should consider learning medical ninjutsu. Naruto and Sasuke are both well suited to becoming combat-focused ninja. But your chakra control is far superior to theirs, and it's clear you're not suited to the path of a combat ninja. Learning medical ninjutsu and becoming a medical ninja would be much more important for your team. What do you think, Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi began to contemplate. Previously, he had considered training Sakura to become a Genjutsu specialist. With his own expertise in Genjutsu, he would have been able to guide her in that direction. However, Yorua's suggestion. "Not bad," Kakashi said. Their team indeed needed a medical ninja. Back in Kakashi's old team, Rin Nohara was their medical ninja. She was even capable of transplanting a Sharingan on the battlefield, which showed just how skilled she was in medical ninjutsu. Sakura was indeed well suited to learning medical ninjutsu, and their team truly needed one. Sakura began to ponder this suggestion. Looking at Sasuke and Naruto, Sakura said, "It's actually a good idea." Seeing Sakura agree, Kakashi added, "Once we return to the village, I'll introduce you to a few medical ninjas who can teach you medical ninjutsu." If Kakashi could get someone like Ebisu, Konohamaru's personal tutor, personally assigned by the third Hokage, to train Naruto, then finding a few medical ninjas to teach Sakura would be no issue at all. Although Sakura had always wanted to develop as a combat ninja, she was aware of her limitations. While her chakra control was far superior to Naruto's and Sasuke's, her overall chakra reserves were nowhere near as large as theirs. Moreover, during this time, she had witnessed both Naruto and Sasuke grow significantly, leaving her far behind. Not to mention Yorua, comparing herself to him only emphasized how weak she was. Since combat wasn't her strong suit, she decided it was better to focus on medical ninjutsu to provide healing support for her teammates. Of course, Sakura wasn't aware that she did, in fact, possess combat potential. She just hadn't yet encountered a teacher capable of developing it. Yorua, however, knew the truth, though Tsunade hadn't yet returned to the village. At this stage, learning medical ninjutsu would benefit Sakura the most. During breaks in her medical ninjutsu training, she could even learn Genjutsu from Kakashi. Becoming a ninja proficient in both Genjutsu and medical ninjutsu would make her exceptionally strong compared to ordinary shinobi. Take Kurenai Yui, for example. While her performance against Itachi Uchiha left much to be desired, nearly anyone would fare poorly against Itachi. Kurenai was no exception. Still, her proficiency in Genjutsu was exceptional among ordinary ninja, evident from her rank as a full-fledged Jonin rather than a Takebutsu Jonin. Specialized skills at Jonin level only qualified one for Takebutsu Jonin, but to become a full Jonin required proficiency in multiple areas. So, with high aptitude in Genjutsu, even an ordinary ninja could reach Jonin level expertise. As for those with special bloodlines, like the Sharingan, that was another matter entirely. From Yorua's perspective, Sakura's talents were quite promising, making her well suited for Taijutsu, Genjutsu, and medical ninjutsu. In the original story, however, Kakashi paid little attention to her in the early stages, which meant that before meeting Tsunade, Sakura's combat skills had barely improved since her academy days. If, prior to that, Sakura had mastered Genjutsu and medical ninjutsu, achieving the rank of Chunin would have been effortless for her, even if she didn't reach Jonin. Sakura smiled at Yorua and said, Then you'd better not make me angry in the future. Once I master medical ninjutsu, if you get injured in battle, you'll have to rely on me to heal you. Yoru was briefly stunned. But I'm not on the same team as you. Let's wait until Sasuke and Naruto wake up so they can hear this unfortunate news instead. Yoru replied with a teasing tone. What are you talking about? You're definitely going to keep doing missions with us in the future. Kakashi-sensei is so biased, he's probably not planning to let you go back. Sakura said, glancing over at Kakashi. Kakashi looked a bit embarrassed. It was awkward having his little scheme exposed by Sakura. Yoru glanced at Kakashi and noticed his slightly awkward expression, his lips twitching slightly. Could Sakura actually be right? As it turned out, Kakashi really was thinking that way. He intended to take Yoru along on missions outside the village in the future. One reason was to broaden Yoru's horizons and help him gain real combat experience. The other reason was his concern that if Yoru stayed in the village, the third Hokage or Denzo might target him. Though he believed the third wouldn't act against his word, having promised otherwise before, who could say for sure? What if? Kakashi wasn't willing to take that gamble, especially knowing how easily the third could compromise. Who knew what schemes Denzo might use to force the third into submission? Kakashi had been in the Anbu for many years, he'd witnessed situations like this before. If he didn't keep Yoru by his side, he couldn't feel at ease. And within the village, Kiyotoichi wasn't in a position to truly protect Yoru. Kiyotoichi's standing in Hidden Lee village wasn't remotely comparable to Kakashi's. Additionally, Kakashi worried that Kiyotoichi might fall out with the village over Yoru. If he ended up becoming a rogue ninja, it would be a disaster. While Kakashi trusted Kiyotoichi's loyalty to Hidden Lee village, if the third and Denzo pushed him into a corner, even he might consider defecting. With Yoru being innocent, Kiyotoichi's personality wouldn't allow him to stand by and let harm come to him. Especially since Yoru was his direct apprentice, even though he hadn't really taught him much. But that bond was there, and it wasn't something he could ignore. If Yoru were left in Kiyotoichi's care, Kakashi worried he might take Yoru with him and defect. That would be a mess. Of course, all of this was just Kakashi's speculation. None of these worries had actually materialized yet. His years in the Anbu had simply made him overly cautious, with a mindset that sometimes leaned toward darkness. However, while Kakashi thought this way, Yoru wasn't too keen on constantly going on missions with Kakashi. After all, Kiyotoichi was his teacher, yet he had only been on one mission with him, Tanako, and Yamata Jumoku. Yoru worried that the three of them might feel unhappy about it. Although Yoru didn't have much ambition, he still considered the feelings of his teammates and teacher. Chapter 77. Yoru didn't dwell too much on the topic. After helping Kakashi bring Naruto and Sasuke back to Kazuna's house, Kakashi sought Yoru out to learn more about what had happened with Naruto. During Naruto's rampage, Kakashi had been busy fighting Zabuza and hadn't been able to observe Naruto's condition. Under the moonlight on the balcony of one of the rooms, the two of them sat together. Yoru began, "The seal inside Naruto has started to weaken." This time, during his rampage, two tails appeared. Even with just two tails, he was already giving me immense pressure. If he had gone to three tails, I don't think I would have been able to suppress him. This was Yoru's personal assessment. Even with Naruto at the two-tail state, Yoru had felt a significant threat. He believed that if Naruto's transformation had progressed to three tails, he wouldn't have been able to manage the situation. Yoru's mindset was somewhat similar to Hashirama Senju's. He only saw how powerful the opponent was without realizing how much of a threat he himself posed. In reality, Yoru had used a combination jutsu to subdue Naruto with relative ease. The chakra he consumed hadn't even reached 1/10 of his reserves. Moreover, his combination of the water dragon bullet and lightning style wasn't just effective against a two-tailed Naruto. It would have been more than sufficient to suppress even a three-tailed Naruto. The real threat to Naruto during his rampage wasn't the water dragon bullet but Yoru's lightning style. Yoru's lightning style was entirely different from that of ordinary ninja, it was significantly more powerful and destructive. Kakashi, however, wasn't aware of these specific details. But he could clearly sense how sinister and menacing the chakra Naruto had emitted during his rampage had been. Kakashi believed Yoru's words without question. "This is also why the third Hokage entrusted Naruto to me," Kakashi explained. Since becoming a ninja, Naruto's chances of losing control have increased significantly compared to before. Based on the combat ability he displayed during today's rampage, it's clear that even I would struggle to suppress him. Although I have the Sharingan, I'm not an Uchiha. My ability to suppress tailed beasts is limited. If it weren't for your intervention today, I don't think I would have been able to calm Naruto down. Yoru responded, "When we return to the village, you should consider learning some sealing techniques, Kakashi-sensei. Since the third Hokage entrusted Naruto to you, He'll likely support you in learning skills that can help handle his rampages. Kakashi gave a bitter smile. It's not that simple. Do you really think learning sealing techniques is easy? Basic seals are one thing, but seals designed to suppress tailed beasts are incredibly difficult to master. I've tried to learn them before, but most of those techniques are forbidden level jutsu, and I couldn't grasp them. Besides, Hidden Leaf Village's tailed beast sealing techniques largely originate from the Uzumaki clan. Many of them require the bloodline of the Uzumaki to be fully mastered. The fourth Hokage could use them because his wife was from the Uzumaki clan. I've studied those techniques in the past but couldn't learn them. Kakashi felt helpless. It wasn't that he hadn't tried to learn the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques, he simply hadn't succeeded. After all, he had been the fourth Hokage's student. Given Minato's personality, it was natural for him to have taught Kakashi sealing techniques. But even so, Kakashi hadn't been able to master them. It was much like how the Flying Thunder God Jutsu wasn't something only Minato had studied, several of his contemporaries had attempted to learn it as well. Even the guards had studied it, but none had succeeded in learning it. Kakashi was undoubtedly a genius, but his talent lay mainly in combat. When it came to sealing techniques, his aptitude wasn't particularly strong. And sealing techniques designed for tailed beasts were especially challenging, which was why Kakashi hadn't mastered them. Yoru was a bit surprised. Even you couldn't learn it? Just how difficult is it? Kakashi sighed. It's really difficult. Many of these techniques also require the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan to perform. Yoru thought about it and realized that Kakashi was right. Many of the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques did rely on their unique bloodline. For instance, the adamantine sealing chains. This sealing technique was extremely powerful. Thanks to it, the Nine Tails had never gone on a rampage inside Uzumaki Kushina. And the technique wasn't only used for sealing, it could also be employed in combat. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, when Karen Uzumaki erupted with the adamantine sealing chains to save Sasuke, she shattered Ginkaku's arm into pieces. Before Minato Namikaze sealed the Nine Tails inside Naruto, Kushina had restrained the beast completely using the adamantine sealing chains, even in her dying moments. This alone was a testament to the technique's overwhelming strength. However, this technique was clearly tied to the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan. After all, only Uzumaki Karen and Uzumaki Kushina were known to have used it. There were also other incredibly powerful sealing techniques, like the Reaper Death Seal. But this was a one-time used jutsu. Even if Kakashi knew it, Yoru wouldn't want to learn it. Kakashi turned to Yoru suddenly, as though an idea had struck him. Wait a second. Just because I found it difficult doesn't mean you will. Kakashi considered Yoru's talent for ninjutsu. Could it be that Yoru also had a natural aptitude for learning sealing techniques? Yoru was stunned for a moment. What do you mean? Kakashi explained, what I mean is, if you have a knack for learning sealing techniques, I can teach you. Even though I didn't manage to master them back then, I still remember the principles very clearly. But aren't these sealing techniques classified as forbidden? Shouldn't a genin like me be restricted from learning them? Yoru frowned slightly. He wasn't worried about whether he could learn them but was more concerned about whether this would cause trouble for Kakashi. After all, sealing techniques capable of suppressing tailed beasts were definitely considered village secrets. And most of Hidden Leaf Village's sealing techniques originated from the Uzumaki clan. The Uzumaki clan sealing techniques were among the finest in the ninja world. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, even Killer Bee had remarked to Naruto that the sealing techniques on Naruto were far superior to the ones on him. This alone highlighted how precious the Uzumaki clan's techniques were. It was partly because of this that the Uzumaki clan had been annihilated. Kakashi waved his hand dismissively. I trust you completely. I even taught you the Chidori. If you can learn sealing techniques, we'll have a solid way to deal with Naruto's situation. Kakashi had absolute confidence in Yoru. In fact, Kakashi was well aware that Yoru's current strength had already surpassed his own. But Yoru had remained unchanged. There wasn't a hint of arrogance in his demeanor. Even Kakashi, back in his own youth, hadn't been able to maintain the humility that Yoru exhibited now. It's decided, then. Starting tomorrow, I'll teach you all the sealing techniques I know. Some of them were taught to me personally by the fourth Hokage. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to learn them at the time. Kakashi felt a bit ashamed. For someone regarded as a genius, his talent in sealing techniques truly wasn't remarkable. He could perform basic seals, like the evil sealing method, without issue. But a technique like that couldn't compare to the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques. It wasn't even sufficient to control something like the curse mark on Sasuke. Chapter 78 Yoru gazed at the moon above and smiled. What if I can't learn it? Kakashi waved his hand dismissively. It's no big deal if you can't. Sealing techniques are inherently difficult. Back then, I wasn't the only one who studied sealing techniques under the fourth Hokage, and none of us succeeded. It wouldn't be surprising if you couldn't learn it, but if you do, we won't have to worry about Naruto's situation anymore. If I had mastered the fourth Hokage's sealing techniques back then, he wouldn't have had to resort to using such dangerous ones himself. Yoru turned to look at Kakashi. After a moment of hesitation, he decided against asking further. Kakashi noticed his hesitation and chuckled. What's with the hesitation? If there's something on your mind, just ask. Yoru glanced at Naruto lying in the room and asked, Kakashi-sensei, why did the fourth Hokage seal the tailed beast inside Naruto back then? Also, Naruto is from the Uzumaki clan, isn't he? There aren't many Uzumaki left in the village. Kakashi didn't hide anything from Yoru. He spoke slowly. I think you've probably already guessed the truth. Yoru frowned. It can't really be what I think it is, can it? Kakashi nodded. That's right. Naruto is the fourth Hokage's child. Back then, it was during the fourth Hokage's wife's labor that the Nine Tails broke free of its seal. At the time, the fourth Hokage had assigned me to protect his wife, but I failed to do so. Yoru was stunned. It wasn't that he was shocked to learn Naruto was the fourth Hokage's son, he had known that for a long time. What surprised him was that Kakashi would tell him such a thing. This was a closely guarded secret of Hidden Leaf Village. In the entire village, only the higher-ups and Kakashi knew the truth. It showed just how much Kakashi trusted him. Even Yoru himself hadn't expected this level of trust. Seeing the stunned expression on Yoru's face, Kakashi assumed he was surprised by the revelation about Naruto's parentage. He added, it's not that strange. After all, Naruto carries the Uzumaki clan's bloodline. Plus, the fourth Hokage hoped he could harness the power of the Nine Tails. Yoru looked back at Naruto in the room. Didn't the fourth Hokage realize what kind of life Naruto would have, sealing the Nine Tails inside him? Kakashi sighed. At the time, there was no other choice. The fourth Hokage's wife was already extremely weak, and after the Nine Tails was extracted, she didn't have much time left. The fourth Hokage also used the Reaper Death Seal, a jutsu that guarantees death for its user. So Naruto was the only option. Plus, with his Uzumaki bloodline, he was the best candidate for a Jinchuriki. Maybe the fourth Hokage hoped Naruto could master the Nine Tails power and become the pillar of the village. The fourth Hokage did indeed have such intentions. The proof lay in the fact that he used the 8 trigram seal instead of the 4-symbol seal. The 4-symbol seal is solely meant for containment, designed to completely suppress the Nine Tails. On the other hand, the 8 trigram seal, while essentially a combination of 2 4-symbol seals, allows part of the Nine Tails chakra to be converted into Naruto's own. It essentially provided Naruto with an additional chakra source. As a result, the chakra within Naruto's body wasn't just his own, it also included the chakra converted from the Nine Tails. Without this, it would have been impossible for someone as young as Naruto to possess chakra levels exceeding even Kakashi's. Even at his age, Naruto, the ninja of the Uzumaki clan, never had such terrifying chakra reserves to begin with. Not to mention, Naruto only has half of the Uzumaki clan's bloodline. The fourth Hokage had very high expectations for Naruto. Yoru remarked. Kakashi nodded. He hopes Naruto can one day fulfill those expectations and master the power of the Nine Tails. When his mother was the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, she never lost control. Yoru chuckled. Isn't that normal? His mother was a pure-blooded Uzumaki, and her sealing techniques were incredible. It's no surprise she never lost control. If Naruto were to learn sealing techniques, he'd probably be able to stabilize the Nine Tails as well. Kakashi shook his head. I'm not so optimistic about that. Sealing techniques require more than just the power of bloodlines. Most importantly, they demand a deep understanding of their principles, which is incredibly difficult to achieve. Naruto has the bloodline, but I doubt he has the mental capacity for it. Yoru was speechless. Kakashi-sensei, how can you be so sure if you haven't even tried? Kakashi didn't respond further. He knew well that mastering sealing techniques wasn't easy. In fact, skilled practitioners of sealing techniques were extremely rare in the ninja world. This scarcity was why every major village had a dedicated sealing squad. The existence of such squads ensured that the few who mastered sealing techniques could be centralized for greater effectiveness. Merely knowing a few techniques like the evil sealing method didn't count as mastering sealing arts. Though sealing techniques might seem to have no use beyond sealing itself, their learning difficulty far surpassed that of combat-oriented ninjutsu. Kakashi knew Naruto too well, which was why he was certain Naruto wasn't suited for it. He had initially planned to teach Naruto some sealing techniques but abandoned the idea after testing his aptitude. Naruto's talent for sealing techniques was even worse than Kakashi's. The primary issue was the vast and complex theoretical foundation required for sealing techniques. Even Kakashi had struggled to grasp it, let alone Naruto, who often scored 0 in the Ninja Academy. Kakashi didn't want to dwell on the subject and said, "But I have high hopes for you. I believe you'll be able to master those sealing techniques. If you do, I won't have to be so anxious every time I take Naruto on a mission." Yorua's mouth twitched. "Kakashi-sensei, are you planning to have me tag along every time you leave the village? I'm not even part of your team." Occasionally accompanying them felt like a vacation to Yorua, but being dragged along on every mission was something he wasn't willing to do. Kakashi patted Yorua's shoulder. "You know your squad technically shouldn't exist in the first place, right? It's only because of you that your squad still stands. You should be aware that you and your teammates were never meant to be on the same level. From the day your squad passed the evaluation thanks to you, you were already different from them. And now, to the village's upper echelons, you're no longer seen as an ordinary ninja. The more you stay with your teammates, the more you put them at risk. Because whether it's to make you stronger or due to some unforeseen circumstance where you..." Kakashi's voice trailed off, his expression growing heavier. "They will all be implicated because of you. This is also why your teacher agreed to hand you over to me. If you don't maintain some distance from your two teammates, they will eventually suffer because of your involvement." Yorua fell silent. He didn't completely agree with Kakashi's words. But when he thought about the commotion he had caused that day, he had to admit Kakashi was probably right. If the third Hokage hadn't discovered his existence, things might have been fine. But now that the third Hokage was aware of him, whether Yorua liked it or not, his position in the third's eyes was no longer the same. He was no longer just an ordinary ninja. Whatever happened to Yorua in the future, Tanako and Yamada Jumoka would undoubtedly be dragged into it. They might even die because of him. Even though it was a time of peace, the struggles among ninjas remained ruthless and bloody. Kakashi wasn't wrong. In Yorua's memories, during this year's round of team evaluations, only Kakashi's team, Kurenai's team, and Asuma's team were originally supposed to pass. That was all predetermined by the third Hokage. Who would have thought that Yorua's team would pass as well? It was Yorua's presence that had changed the course of events. From Yorua's perspective, both Yamada Jumoku and Tanako's talent was rather average. If their teammate hadn't been him, and considering Kiyotoichi's personality, they likely wouldn't have passed the evaluation. Now that they were involved in Yorua's affairs, it wasn't a good thing for them. Especially with Denzo, the schemer. If Denzo wanted to target Yorua, he would undoubtedly start by attacking those close to him. The closer Yorua's relationship with Tanako and Yamada Jumoku, the more interactions they had, the more certain it was that Denzo would come for them. This was something Yorua absolutely did not want to see. Chapter 7. Seeing Yorua's expression, Kakashi knew he had gotten through to him. Fortunately, the third Hokage hadn't witnessed Yorua's battle today. Otherwise, it wouldn't just be caution, he would probably have sent Anbu to keep an eye on him. Yorua was only 12 years old, yet he was already capable of killing an elite Jonin. And not just any elite Jonin, but one of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, Riga. The ninjutsu Yorua used tonight to suppress the rampaging Naruto was also already in the realm of forbidden techniques. Even more terrifying was that the jutsu Yorua used today wasn't even his most powerful one. In a few months, you'll be participating in the Chunin exams. By then, the third Hokage will definitely know about your strength. Kakashi said. Yorua nodded. I assume you want me to take part in this Chunin exam, right? Kakashi smiled. I'm afraid it's not up to me to decide. This time, the Sand Village will also be sending participants to the Chunin exams. Do you know what that means? Yorua nodded. It means Hidden Leaf Village needs to send its strongest genin of this generation to participate. I guess everyone from my year will be taking part, right? Kakashi chuckled. Exactly. Although we are allies with the Sand Village, we absolutely cannot let them see even the slightest sign of weakness in Hidden Leaf Village. Otherwise, who knows what they might do. Although it's nominally a Chunin exam, each village will send its most outstanding genin to showcase their military strength. At a time like this, the third Hokage won't let you sit idle. Yorua shrugged. I don't mind. I was planning to get promoted to Chunin sooner anyway. After all, as a Chunin, I can take on higher level missions. And the rewards are better too. Don't be fooled by the high commissions ninjas earn from missions. First, half of the commission is taken by the village. The remaining half is then divided among the ninjas who carried out the mission. Moreover, ninjas don't get any travel expenses for missions, all costs are borne by the ninjas themselves. The village doesn't provide ninja tools either, they have to be purchased by the ninjas. This is why many Jonin, despite completing numerous high-level missions, are still quite poor. Except for someone like Jiraiya, who has side income and can become wealthy, many Jonin aren't as rich as one might imagine. Keep in mind that a single explosive tag costs several thousand ryo. An average Gainin, after completing a C-rank mission, might only get a few thousand ryo at most. In other words, even if a regular Gainin takes on the highest level mission they can handle, sometimes the money they earn isn't even enough to buy a single explosive tag. Of course, explosive tags are considered high-level ninja tools in the ninja world. And for a Gainin, an explosive tag is the most powerful tool they have. Unless, like Sasuke, a Gainin can perform a fire-style jutsu like the Great Fireball Jutsu. But as Kakashi said, Sasuke's chakra reserves are far greater than those of an average Gainin. Most Gainin simply don't have enough chakra to perform the Great Fireball Jutsu. So, without a powerful offensive jutsu, explosive tags are the most potent tools available. Yoru hadn't brought any explosive tags with him this time. He did have a few, but they were left at home. He had bought them earlier to use as a trump card. The exploding tags, a type of ninja tool, are used by shinobi of all levels, from Gainin to Kage level ninja. Moreover, many even use them as their ultimate techniques. Because even Kage level shinobi can die if they're hit by an exploding tag. Many Jounin, and even Kage level shinobi, have been killed by exploding tags. Exploding tags pose a significant threat to shinobi of any level. Of course, the prerequisite is that you can actually hit your opponent. This time, Yoru didn't carry any exploding tags, not because he didn't need them, but because they were too expensive. He only had a few and couldn't bear to bring them. Plus, he was quite confident in his own strength. Even if he couldn't win, he could still escape. Since he didn't plan on becoming a rogue ninja, Yoru still hoped to get promoted and earn a raise sooner rather than later. Kakashi looked at Yoru's serious expression and couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect you to be such a money grubber. Yoru rolled his eyes at Kakashi. I'm not a money grubber, but even ninjas need money. Without money, you can't even afford ninja tools. That's true. Since the third Hokage promised to train you, he probably won't go back on his word. Let's hope so. Kakashi wasn't entirely confident. But he had no choice but to trust the third Hokage. After all, he wasn't the Hokage himself. After you learn sealing techniques, keep an eye on Naruto for me. Kakashi said seriously. How do you know I'll definitely learn it? Yoru asked. And isn't looking after Naruto your responsibility? Kakashi smiled at Yoru and patted his shoulder. I have a lot of confidence in you. It seems like there's no ninjutsu you can't learn. And since you'll have mastered a sealing technique capable of suppressing a tailed beast, looking after Naruto will naturally become part of your responsibility. No, to put it more accurately, the capable should do more. If you learn sealing techniques, you should definitely keep an eye on Naruto. Seeing Kakashi's triumphant expression, Yoru felt speechless. Yoru couldn't help but feel that Kakashi didn't really want to look after Naruto. Naruto was his sensei's son, after all. But thinking about Naruto's usual behavior, Yoru understood Kakashi. Kakashi's personality was completely different from Naruto's. He probably found Naruto's constant pranks to be a headache. At this point in time, Naruto did pull a lot of pranks. Some of them were harmless and could be laughed off. But many of them were so annoying that they made you want to punch him. Fortunately, in Team Kakashi, Sakura was completely focused on Sasuke, while Sasuke was solely obsessed with getting stronger to take revenge on Itachi Uchiha, so he didn't pay much attention to Naruto's antics. Kakashi was probably the one who suffered the most. He didn't have any real issues with Naruto, but guiding a troublemaker like him could be infuriating at times. If Yoru could learn sealing techniques and take over looking after Naruto, it would not only ensure Naruto's safety and the village's security but also give Kakashi some peace and quiet. It sounded like a win-win. Yoru could see through Kakashi's plan, and it left him feeling exasperated. Kakashi-sensei, I think you're being a bit irresponsible towards Naruto. I'd like to be responsible, but you know how poor his basics are, and with that personality of his, it's a miracle I haven't been driven mad by now. My team is full of problem children. As my student, shouldn't you help share the burden? Kakashi looked at Yoru. You just want a free laborer, don't you? Yoru said with a cold laugh. Kakashi looked a bit embarrassed. Of course, the reason he thought this way was because he had great confidence and high expectations for Yoru. It was also a sign of his trust in Yoru. After all, Naruto was a Jinchuriki, and you couldn't just hand him over to anyone to look after. But Kakashi had absolute faith in Yoru. He didn't believe Yoru would pose any threat to the village. From the very beginning, he had been training Yoru to be a ninja like the fourth Hokage. It was just that Yoru's later talent had taken him by surprise. Chapter 80 Kakashi patted Yoru on the shoulder and said, Alright, it's settled. Focus on learning sealing techniques. As long as you master them, I won't have to worry about Naruto losing control. You mentioned that the seal in Naruto's body is already loosening, didn't you? You wouldn't want him to go berserk and destroy the Leaf Village, nor would you want the Nine Tails to break free and harm him, right? Yorua smiled bitterly. You're really laying it on thick. But I don't have a reason to refuse. I'll give it a try and see if I can master sealing techniques. That said, if even you couldn't learn them, I'm not very confident I'll be able to either. Just 2 tails were already so hard to deal with. Who knows how strong he'll be if more tails appear. If the 9 tails heard Yorua's words, it would undoubtedly be infuriated. Yorua had subdued Naruto in his berserk form with just one technique. Who was the truly powerful one here? If the 9 tails heard this, it would surely recall what the first Hokage once said to it. The technique Yorua used combined water and lightning, and the water dragon alone reached a height of 300 meters, several times larger than the first Hokage's wooden dragon. For context, the wooden golem was only a few dozen meters tall, and even the Great Buddha statue was just a few hundred meters high. Only with the addition of the Thousand Hands technique did it surpass 1,000 meters. Yet Yorua's water dragon alone was 300 meters tall, enhanced with lightning for devastating destructive power. The combination technique Yorua used could rival, if not surpass, the wooden dragon technique. And yet Yorua claimed that if Naruto continued to lose control, he'd become so powerful that Yorua wouldn't be able to suppress him. In truth, after subduing Naruto with 2 tails unleashed, Yorua had only used about 10% of his chakra. And that was after expending a considerable amount of chakra earlier in his fight with Kurosukiraga. What was most infuriating was Yorua's statement that his technique could only suppress a 2-tailed Naruto, implying he wouldn't be able to handle 3 tails. If the 9 tails heard that, it would have cursed Yorua to no end. The power of Yorua's technique was overwhelming, even a 3-tailed Naruto wouldn't be able to withstand it. Kakashi, however, wasn't aware of the full extent of a 3-tailed Naruto's strength. But based on what he had witnessed from the 2-tailed Naruto, he was convinced that beyond 2 tails, it would be nearly impossible to control Naruto in his berserk state. The 2-tailed Naruto's overwhelming chakra had already left Kakashi feeling utterly powerless. It was an even more terrifying sensation than the killing intent Orochimaru had once directed at him. Back then, Orochimaru had subdued Kakashi with just a glance. Despite being injured at the time, Orochimaru's sheer presence left Kakashi too afraid to attack. That experience had left a lasting impression on Kakashi. But the malevolent chakra exuding from the 2-tailed Naruto was even more terrifying than Orochimaru's killing intent. Kakashi wasn't mistaken. At the time, even Haku had been completely overwhelmed by Naruto's berserk state. Although Haku could have teleported away in an instant, the intense bloodlust radiating from the 9 tails had paralyzed his body. And at that moment, Naruto had only unleashed a single tail. The more Kakashi thought about this, the more determined he became to see Yorua master sealing techniques. The power of the 9 tails was far beyond his imagination. The memories of the 9 tails rampage were still vivid in Kakashi's mind. Even someone as powerful as Minato Namikaze had to sacrifice his life to seal the 9 tails. If Kushina Uzumaki had still been alive at the time, no matter how strong the 9 tails was, it wouldn't have been able to break free from the seal. The sealing techniques of the Uzumaki clan were simply that overwhelming and uncompromising. Just the adamantine sealing chains alone were enough to completely restrain the 9 tails. Kakashi and Yorua talked for a long time. It wasn't until midnight that the two finally went to rest. When Yorua returned to the room, Sakura was tending to Naruto and Sasuke, wiping their faces. Both of them were badly injured. Looking at Sasuke, Yorua said, Kakashi-sensei, despite how Sasuke usually acts like he looks down on Naruto, when it comes to life-threatening situations, he truly would risk his life to protect him. If his family hadn't gone through what they did, I think Sasuke would have been an exceptional ninja. Kakashi nodded. When I first tested those 3, it was Sasuke who gave his food to Naruto, even though he knew it might risk him failing the test. That was one of the reasons why Kakashi valued Sasuke so highly. Aside from Obito Uchiha and the Sharingan, Kakashi clearly understood what kind of person Sasuke was. Kakashi always hoped Sasuke could let go of the hatred he carried for his clan's tragedy and avoid walking down such an extreme path. But he also understood that such deep-seated hatred was not something easily cast aside. The group was staying in the same room. Lying on his futon, Yorua stared at the ceiling and said, if he could let go of the hatred in his heart, he would definitely live a happier life. But unfortunately, that's impossible. Kakashi-sensei, I don't think what you're trying to do is likely to succeed. Kakashi didn't deny it. He simply said, I can only do my best. Even knowing that there was little hope of Sasuke letting go of his hatred, Kakashi was still willing to try and change him. As for helping Sasuke kill Itachi Uchiha and seek revenge, Kakashi didn't think he could accomplish that. After all, This was Itachi Uchiha. Even before Itachi awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, Kakashi already found it difficult to match him in combat. Moreover, Kakashi had always found the circumstances surrounding Itachi's massacre of the Uchiha clan and his defection from the Leaf to be highly suspicious. He was certain that the third Hokage and Denzo were somehow involved. However, such matters weren't something he could easily investigate. In fact, Kakashi had once greatly admired Itachi Uchiha. After all, Itachi was one of the few members of the Uchiha clan who didn't exhibit the usual arrogance. Before the Nine Tails rampage, the Uchiha clan held a high status in the Leaf Village, especially as they controlled the police force, which only fueled their pride. The second Hokage's original intention in giving the Uchiha clan such authority was to limit them while also integrating them into the village. But the significant power wielded by the police force only made them more conceited. Coupled with their many achievements in war, members of the Uchiha clan generally became quite arrogant. Uchiha members like Obito, Itachi, and Shizue were rare exceptions. In his earlier years, Obito Uchiha had a personality similar to Naruto's, kind and caring. Back then, Kushina Uzumaki even hoped that her child would grow up to be like Obito. Before the tragedy, Obito and Kushina had a very close relationship, even closer than the bond between Kakashi and Kushina. Of course, that was before everything went wrong. After the tragedy, Kushina could never have imagined that the boy she once regarded as a younger brother would say to her upon seeing her again, "The Uzumaki clan's vitality is truly something else. Even after all this, you still won't die." Kakashi had always wanted to change Sasuke, but the more he tried, the more he realized that he couldn't. Chapter 81 Sakura had been quietly listening to the conversation between Yorua and Kakashi. As moonlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room despite the night, she glanced at Yorua and Kakashi talking so casually. The images of Yorua's battle with Hirokirasuke earlier that day and how he subdued the rampaging Naruto replayed in her mind. She couldn't believe that this godlike Yorua could now be so calm and composed. When she saw that massive, several hundred-meter-long water dragon soaring through the sky, Yorua, standing on the surface of the ocean, seemed small in stature yet immeasurably towering. But once the battle ended, Yorua reverted to his usual demeanor. It was hard to reconcile how such contrasting personas could exist within the same person. The gap between them and Yorua felt insurmountable. Or perhaps, it was just the gap between her and Yorua that felt so immense. Naruto, with the power of the tailed beast inside him, was already extraordinarily strong, though still not as powerful as Yorua. Sasuke was also formidable. Among their team, she was clearly the weakest. Maybe I should really listen to Yorua and learn medical ninjutsu. I'm not good at combat, but I can at least become a medical ninja. At that moment, Sakura's determination to become a medical ninja solidified. Elsewhere, deep within a forest in the land of waves, Zabuza and Hiku, who had retreated from the bridge, felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Recalling Yorua's techniques, Zabuza muttered with a lingering sense of dread, "What kind of monster is that kid? To unleash such a terrifying water dragon bullet jutsu. It was on a much larger scale than when we first fought. It's only been about 10 days, how could his strength increase so much in such a short time?" Zabuza couldn't understand how Yorua's power had grown so rapidly. After all, Yorua was just a genin. If we hadn't retreated in time, we'd have been killed by him for sure. Zabuza said, his voice trembling slightly. When he fought Yorua previously, Zabuza thought the boy was only at the level of an average jonin. But today, Yorua's displayed strength far surpassed his own. In fact, Zabuza felt as if he were facing a Mizukage. Especially that water dragon bullet jutsu, its scale and power surpassed even that of the Mizukage. No Mizukage could summon a water dragon over 300 meters long. What terrified Zabuza most was how the water dragon didn't dissipate for a long time, behaving almost as though it were alive. That was the truly horrifying part. Just recalling the overwhelming, tsunami-like waves when Yorua commanded the water dragon made Zabuza shudder. He couldn't imagine surviving an attack like that. For the first time in his life, Zabuza felt fear toward another person. Yorua was undoubtedly capable of killing him with ease. And he was just a genin. It was utterly terrifying. Hidden Leaf Village is too frightening. Not only do they have that blonde brat, who's likely a Jinchuriki of a tailed beast, but they also have that kid who can subdue a rampaging Jinchuriki with just one jutsu. And he even killed Hirokirasuke. That's terrifying. With him around, how can we possibly kill the old man building the bridge? This mission is impossible to complete. Though Zabuza hated to admit it, he knew deep down that this mission was a lost cause. As long as Yorua was there, attempting to complete the mission would be tantamount to walking into their own deaths. Standing silently nearby, Hiku didn't interrupt. Hiku remained silent. Although Yorua's overwhelming strength had left him shocked, He was even more curious about why Yoru had intervened when Naruto tried to kill him. Logically speaking, he was Yoru's enemy. Even though Naruto had lost control, his target was Zabuza, so Yoru had no reason to shield him. However, Haku didn't mention this to Zabuza. Unable to figure it out, he decided to stop dwelling on it. In his heart, though, he silently marked this as a great favor. No matter what Yoru's reasoning was, the fact remained that Yoru had saved his life. If Yoru hadn't stepped in to block Naruto, he would have been dead for sure. At that time, his entire body had been immobilized by the Nine Tails chakra, leaving him completely unable to move. Moreover, the berserk Naruto's attacks were so fast that evasion was impossible. After a long silence, Zabuza finally looked at Haku and asked, "That kid didn't attack you?" Zabuza snapped back to the moment. Back then, Haku had been engaged with Naruto's team. How had Haku managed to return unharmed? Haku thought for a moment and replied, "Not long after the blonde boy lost control, that person appeared. I took the opportunity while they were fighting to retreat." Zabuza didn't press further. After all, he himself had fled in much the same way. Yoru's strength was simply too terrifying. Even though Gato had paid handsomely, this mission was utterly impossible to complete. It was practically a suicide mission. As a rogue ninja, Zabuza wasn't bound by any loyalty to Gato's contract. "This mission is over. Let's leave this place," Zabuza said decisively. Haku nodded. Wherever Zabuza went, he would follow. But in his heart, Haku would always remember Yoru. Yoru was the first person to willingly shield him from danger. Years ago, when Zabuza saved him, it was with the intent of turning him into a tool. But Yoru had saved him without asking for anything in return. It was a purely selfless act. This left a deep impression on Haku, whose inherently kind nature made him view Yoru in a positive light. The feeling was entirely different from when Zabuza had saved him. If Zabuza weren't in the picture, Haku might have followed Yoru with the same devotion that Kimimaro showed to Orochimaru. Of course, that was impossible. Yoru had only shielded him from Naruto because he understood Haku's character and didn't want Naruto to recklessly kill someone. As the two were packing their things and preparing to leave, the door was suddenly kicked open again. "Zabuza, why have you failed again? The bridge is only a few days away from completion, and you can't even kill one old man. What have you been doing?" This time, Gato arrived with dozens of samurai. He had been too scared by Zabuza the last time. However, Gato's knowledge of ninjas was limited. While samurai could include many skilled fighters, the ones Gato had hired were clearly wandering ronin with little ability. These drifters were no match for ninja, let alone someone of Zabuza's caliber. Still, Gato felt confident that with dozens of samurai to back him, he could suppress Zabuza. But Zabuza only glanced at the samurai, and those who had been clustered near him immediately began trembling with fear, scattering in all directions. Only 2 samurai remained, their bodies shaking but their teeth clenched as they stood their ground. These 2 were the bodyguards Gato had hired at great expense, and they had a shred of professional integrity. Yet their trembling legs betrayed their uselessness in the face of Zabuza. Zabuza, already seething with frustration, now had a convenient target for his anger. Gripping the executioner's blade, he began walking toward Gato. A murderous aura emanated from him, chilling the air. This killing intent might not faze someone like Yoru or Kakashi, but for an ordinary man like Gato, it was utterly overwhelming. Zabuza had barely taken a few steps before Gato was crushed by the sheer weight of his presence, dropping to his knees. Trembling all over, his gaze was vacant and lifeless. For the first time, Gato felt the true terror of a Jonin. "This mission is done. Find someone else to do your dirty work," Zabuza said coldly, towering over Gato. "But let me give you some advice, don't go against Kakashi and his team again. With your resources, there's no way you can hire anyone capable of defeating them. Even if you manage to hire a few elite Jonin, they still wouldn't stand a chance against them." Chapter 82 Zabuza was an elite Jonin who had killed countless people. His killing intent alone was more than someone like Gato, a mere civilian, could endure. Although Gato was extremely displeased with Zabuza, he didn't dare provoke him at this moment. He was terrified that Zabuza might swing his executioner's blade and cut him in half. It was only after Zabuza and Haku had left that Gato finally regained his composure. The moment he snapped out of it, rage consumed him. Seeing that Zabuza was no longer in sight, he immediately cursed aloud, "Damn it! What kind of useless Jonin is that? Acting all high and mighty. If you won't do the job, plenty of others will." Just as he finished cursing, Zabuza appeared before him once more. His cold gaze pierced into Gato. Terrified, Gato dropped to his knees again. I wasn't talking about you. Please spare me." Zabuza rested the executioner's blade against Gato's neck. The 2 samurai tried to intervene, but before they could draw their swords, Haku appeared out of nowhere and restrained their hands. If you don't want to die, don't act recklessly. Hiku warned. The two samurai wanted to save Gato, but they were entirely subdued by Hiku. As wandering ronin with limited skills, they couldn't even handle a low-ranking ninja, let alone someone like Hiku, whose strength was already at the level of a Jonin. Half of the payment for this mission will go to me. If you don't pay up, I'll take it myself, and I can't guarantee you'll live through that. Zabuza said coldly. His icy tone sent Gato into a panic. The man kowtowed repeatedly, begging for mercy. I'll pay. I'll pay immediately. Just please don't kill me. Having brought dozens of samurai with him, Gato was now left with only two, and even those two were useless. It was only now that Gato fully grasped the vast gap in strength between samurai and ninja. He finally understood how terrifying Zabuza was. In the ninja world, even many samurai had been forced to abandon their way and become ninjas instead. Zabuza had no interest in wasting more time on Gato. After issuing his threat, he and Hiku left. Only after confirming that Zabuza and Hiku were truly gone did Gato collapse onto the ground, his entire body trembling. Damn it. I've lost so much. He muttered bitterly. Even at a time like this, Gato, ever the businessman, couldn't help but focus on his financial losses. After that encounter, Gato didn't send anyone else to disrupt the bridge construction. After all, the construction team had Kakashi and his group protecting them. Gato had already hired two elite jonin to assassinate Tazuna, but they had failed. He knew Tazuna's hired ninjas were extraordinarily powerful, and it would be a waste of money to hire more ninjas for the job. Once the bridge was completed, his shipping business would undoubtedly suffer greatly. But what could Gato do? All he could do was watch helplessly as the bridge neared completion. Meanwhile, Yaru spent his time learning sealing techniques from Kakashi. Sealing techniques were far more difficult to master than other forms of ninjutsu. Kakashi had spent several days explaining the theoretical principles alone. Yoru studied diligently, but after several days, he had yet to begin practical training in sealing techniques. In the forest. After days of theory, Kakashi finally began teaching Yoru how to perform sealing techniques. The first technique was a seal capable of restraining tailed beasts, the four-symbol seal. The fourth Hokage had used a variation of this technique, the 8-trigram seal, to seal the 9 tails into Naruto. The 8-trigram seal was essentially two four-symbol seals combined, a further development of the original technique. The four-symbol seal was a powerful sealing technique from the Uzumaki clan. Its strength far surpassed the techniques other ninja villages used to seal tailed beasts. It's much stronger, that's what Killer Bee said. As long as Yoru mastered the four-symbol seal and could suppress a tailed beast, he could use the seal to confine it within anyone's body, including his own. Of course, Yoru would never actually do such a thing. Kakashi spent over an hour explaining the theory to Yoru, and then, with an expectant look, asked, Yoru, did you understand it? Any ideas? Kakashi's hopefulness came from the fact that even he didn't fully understand the technique, let alone practice it. Yoru remained silent for a moment. Just as Kakashi started to feel disappointed, Yoru nodded. I'll give it a try. Kakashi was stunned. You understood it? Don't tell me you've already figured out how to do it. Yoru didn't reply. Instead, he walked over to the side and began forming hand seals. Four-symbol seal. With a boom. Yoru completed the seals and slammed his palm against a nearby tree. Immediately, a sealing formula appeared on the tree beneath Yoru's hand, a complex and intricate set of mysterious runes. Crack. A cracking sound echoed as the portion of the tree trunk covered by the seal suddenly vanished, leaving a gap in the wood. Seeing his work, Yoru's lips curved into a small smile. It worked. He hadn't expected to succeed on his first try. Wow, this seal consumes so much chakra. Just sealing a piece of wood drained as much chakra as a C-rank jutsu. That's insane. Even though Yoru had a significant chakra reserve, he couldn't help but marvel at the enormous consumption of this sealing technique. If sealing a piece of wood is like this, how much chakra would it take to seal the 9 tails? No wonder the Uzumaki clan members all had immense chakra reserves. Without that, it'd be impossible to sustain such enormous consumption. Yoru now fully understood how demanding sealing techniques were, not just in skill but in chakra requirements. It was terrifying. No wonder so few people learn sealing techniques. Aside from their complexity, they probably also require incredibly high chakra reserves. He thought to himself. His face, however, remained impassive. Meanwhile, Kakashi, who was standing nearby, was completely stunned. You succeeded on your first try? He couldn't believe it. Kakashi knew Yoru's talent for ninjutsu was exceptional, but during the past few days of teaching him sealing theory, he could tell Yoru found it challenging. He hadn't held much hope. Sealing techniques were undeniably high difficulty ninjutsu, and it was no surprise there were so few ninja in the world specializing in them. Yet Yoruba not only grasped it, but succeeded on his very first attempt. And this was the four-symbol seal, one of the most advanced sealing techniques. Even in Hidden Leaf Village, only a handful of individuals had mastered it before, such as the first Hokage, the second Hokage, Uzumaki Mido, Uzumaki Kashina, and Minato Namikaze. Not even the third Hokage, known as the Professor of Ninjutsu, had learned it. If the third Hokage had known the four-symbol seal, Naruto's rampages as a child might have been prevented. There was a time when Naruto lost control and rampaged, forcing the entire Hidden Leaf Village sealing squad to suppress him. And even then, the nine tails had not fully emerged, with no tails manifesting. Had the third Hokage known the four-symbol seal, he could have directly reinforced the 8-trigram seal left by Minato. Unfortunately, he didn't. Of course, both the third Hokage and Denzo had learned single-use sealing techniques. The third mastered the Reaper Death Seal, while Denzo had learned the reverse four-symbol seal. Kakashi walked over, interrupting Yorua's thoughts. "You did it, Yorua." Yorua snapped out of his reverie and said casually, I guess I did. But this seal really drains a lot of chakra." Kakashi was momentarily taken aback. "Oh? It consumes a lot of chakra?" Yorua nodded. "I only sealed a piece of wood, but it already used up as much chakra as a C-rank jutsu." Kakashi chuckled. "Well, it is an Uzumaki clan sealing technique. High chakra consumption is to be expected. The important thing is, you've mastered it. And such a difficult sealing technique, no less. This is a great start. Since you've learned the four-symbol seal, the 8-trigram seal shouldn't be a problem for you. After all, the 8-trigram seal was simply an enhanced version of the four-symbol seal." Chapter 83. Afterward, Kakashi explained the principles of the 8-trigram seal to Yorua. Compared to his explanation of the four-symbol seal, this session was much shorter. Having already mastered the four-symbol seal, Yorua found the 8-trigram seal to be relatively easy. By evening, Yorua had fully learned the 8-trigram seal. Learning just 2 sealing techniques in one day left Yorua feeling a little dissatisfied. But Kakashi was already astonished. For years, Kakashi had been training to master the four-symbol seal and the 8-trigram seal, yet he had never succeeded. Yorua, on the other hand, had learned them both in a single day. His learning ability had far surpassed Kakashi's imagination. Or rather, Yorua's ability to learn might already be beyond what any ninja in this world could achieve. Yorua himself didn't seem to realize this. He only remembered how Itachi Uchiha had once learned fire style, Great Fireball Jutsu, after seeing his father demonstrate it just once. But the difficulty of the four-symbol seal and the 8-trigram seal couldn't be compared to the Great Fireball Jutsu. The four-symbol seal and the 8-trigram seal were both classified as S-rank jutsu, making them absolute forbidden techniques. Meanwhile, the Great Fireball Jutsu was merely a C-rank jutsu. The gap in learning difficulty between the two was like night and day, and the difficulty of sealing techniques far exceeded that of regular ninjutsu. Even though Kakashi could skillfully use the S-rank lightning blade, he hadn't even been able to learn the four-symbol seal or the 8-trigram seal. That night, on the way back from the mountains, Sasuke and Naruto blocked the path of the 3-person group. Kakashi, Yorua, and Sakura, who had accompanied them to the mountain, looked at Sasuke and Naruto standing in their way. "Done for the day so early?" Seeing their expressionless faces, Yorua asked curiously. Sasuke stepped forward toward Yorua and said, "Yorua, teach me how to become stronger." Yorua paused, startled. Naruto stepped up as well. "Yorua, I want you to help me get stronger too." Kakashi furrowed his brows. "What's gotten into you two?" Although Kakashi had anticipated this might happen, since the two hadn't mentioned anything over the past few days, he thought they'd given up on the idea. It turned out they had been waiting until now to bring it up. Yorua felt a bit helpless. He had thought the two of them would no longer ask for his help with this. Sasuke and Naruto ignored Kakashi, their determined gazes fixed on Yorua. Previously, with Yorua's encouragement, the two had believed Kakashi could make them stronger. But after that battle, they both realized Yorua's strength might not be inferior to, or could even surpass, Kakashi's. Kakashi massaged his forehead, exasperated. So it's came to this after all. Sakura, standing to the side, looked a little awkward. It was, after all, Sakura who had told Sasuke and Naruto about Yorua's performance that day. Under their persistent questioning, Sakura had revealed everything about Yorua's feats in that battle. No matter how much Yorua denied it, the two believed Sakura wouldn't lie to them. No amount of protest from Yorua could change the undeniable facts. He had single-handedly defeated Kurasuke Riga, an elite Jonin, and subdued Naruto's rampage with a single jutsu. The truth was impossible to ignore. Even now, Kurasuke Riga's grave remained in the forest, at the battlefield where he and Yoru had fought. The area had been reduced to a wasteland. Within several hundred meters, all the trees and rocks had been obliterated to dust. The scorched earth was a testament to how intense the battle had been. What left Sasuke and Naruto even more stunned was that such a violent battle. Yoru was actually able to defeat Kurasuke Riga, an elite jonin who, in their eyes, was on par with Sabuza. What was most astonishing was that Yoru's ninjutsu completely suppressed Kurasuke Riga. According to Sekira's description, when Yoru unleashed his jutsu, he seemed as powerful as a god descended to earth. Looking at Sasuke and Naruto's serious expressions, Yoru felt a headache coming on. I already told you, I don't know how to help you get stronger. I learned everything I know from Kakashi-sensei. That's impossible. Kakashi-sensei can't be that strong. Naruto retorted. Kakashi's face darkened. Even though Naruto was stating a fact, saying it so bluntly still hurt his pride a little. Sasuke frowned at Yoru and said, "What do you want? As long as I have it, I'll give it to you." Yoru rolled his eyes at him. "I want you two to stop bothering me. Is that too much to ask?" Although Yoru didn't mind teaching them his ninjutsu, the problem was that most of his techniques were ones he had learned from Kakashi. If they wanted to learn, they could just ask Kakashi directly. Furthermore, the ninjutsu Yoru had refined for himself was something only he could use. It wasn't because the techniques themselves were exceptionally powerful, but because their strength came from Yoru's chakra. This was something Yoru couldn't teach. Sasuke still believed that Yoru simply didn't want to teach them. "Yoru, I'm willing to become your apprentice," Sasuke said through gritted teeth. Everyone was stunned by his words. Especially Yoru, whose lips twitched as he looked at Sasuke. "Are you trying to get me killed?" Yoru thought. "Your teacher is standing right here. Did you even think about his feelings? Or my situation for that matter?" Sasuke's statement left both Yoru and Kakashi in an awkward position. Sakura and Naruto, on the other hand, were shocked that Sasuke could humble himself to such an extent. After all, they were classmates of the same age, and Yoru wasn't older than them. Yet Sasuke was willing to acknowledge Yoru as his master. In the ninja world, becoming someone's apprentice was not the same as the usual teacher-student relationship between a jonin and their genin team. Becoming an apprentice meant Sasuke was voluntarily lowering his status, and the phrase "once a master, always a father" applied. Sasuke's decision to do this made Yoru's expression turn extremely awkward. He had no interest in playing the role of an elder to his peers. Moreover, Kakashi was Sasuke's teacher. If Sasuke did this, wouldn't that make Kakashi and Yoru equals? Just the thought of it was uncomfortable. Sasuke's actions would only embarrass Yoru and put him in an awkward position. As Sasuke was about to kneel, Yoru instantly released his chakra. The overwhelming chakra pressure prevented Sasuke from lowering his knees. Sasuke froze in place. He looked up at Yoru, stunned. "If you do this, we can't even be classmates anymore," Yoru said coldly. "Don't put me in a difficult spot." Sasuke was taken aback. After a moment, he understood what Yoru meant. Clenching his fists, he said, "But I want to get stronger. I know you can make me stronger. I'm willing to do anything to become stronger. Even if it costs me my life, as long as it helps me gain the strength to kill that man, I'm willing." Sasuke shouted at Yoru. But Yoru showed no intention of backing down. "So you're saying you have no confidence in surpassing that man through your own efforts?" Yoru's tone was serious. Sasuke remained silent. "Is that right?" Yoru pressed. Sasuke still didn't respond. Yoru deliberately mocked him. "Sasuke, I must have overestimated you. I thought you were someone with pride and backbone, someone who would become my strongest rival. But it seems you don't even deserve that title." Yoru, who was always calm and composed, suddenly saying something so harsh, left Sasuke feeling deeply unsettled. Didn't Yoru know how humiliating and disgraceful his words were? Of course, Sasuke knew. But he also knew how terrifying Itachi Uchiha was. A man capable of massacring his entire clan. Just thinking about that night filled Sasuke with despair. The stronger the people around him became, the more Itachi's overwhelming power shattered his confidence. Yoru's strength reminded Sasuke of Itachi Uchiha. The gap between him and Yoru had grown so vast that he couldn't even see Yoru's shadow anymore. And if the gap between him and Yoru was this great, then how much greater was the gap between him and Itachi? At this point, Sasuke could no longer stay calm. Chapter 84 Yoru's words struck deep into Sasuke's heart. He was angry but powerless to refute them. Yes, he had once believed he was a genius too, that he could catch up to Itachi Uchiha's footsteps. He had thought that one day he would become strong enough to kill Itachi, to avenge the Uchiha clan and his parents. But Yoru's presence repeatedly shattered his already fragile confidence. In Sasuke's mind, Itachi Uchiha was far too powerful. The stronger Yoru became, the more Sasuke realized how immense the gap between himself and Itachi truly was. He had even begun to doubt whether he could ever catch up to Itachi on his own. Could he really kill him? Did he even have the strength to make it possible? Would he be doomed to never avenge his clan or his parents? After a long silence, Sasuke lowered his head and spoke in a heavy tone. I want to believe that, but the stronger you are, the more I think about how strong he is. The gap between us is too big. I really have no hope of killing him. For the first time, Sasuke voiced such defeatist words. Even Yoru hadn't expected this. His earlier harsh remarks were intended to provoke Sasuke's competitive spirit. Instead, they had extinguished what little hope Sasuke had left. For a moment, Yoru felt incredibly awkward. Don't forget, you are his brother. You share the same parents, the same bloodline. Why would your bloodline be inferior to his? Maybe you're even stronger than he is. What you need most isn't learning some powerful ninjutsu. It's developing your Sharingan to its fullest potential. That's the core weapon of the Uchiha clan. Trying to learn ninjutsu from me is the most foolish thing you could do. I have no Sharingan, so I focus on ninjutsu because it's my only means of fighting. Can you be the same as me? If I had the Sharingan, I'd put all my effort into mastering it. Trying to learn ninjutsu from me is abandoning what makes you special. It's utterly stupid. Sasuke, I've never thought that you're weaker than your brother. Remember, you and he share the same bloodline. You can surpass him. And you'll do it with the Uchiha clan's eyes, with the legendary Sharingan. Your Sharingan has already awakened. If you keep honing it, you'll surpass him. You're an Uchiha, not some no-name ninja. Don't misdirect your efforts. Just as Naruto's greatest strength lies in mastering the power of the Nine Tails, your eyes are your foundation. Ninjutsu is only there to complement those eyes. Yoru patted Sasuke's shoulder and spoke earnestly. Of course, the main reason Yoru said all this was to avoid Sasuke actually becoming his apprentice. That would have been way too awkward. Besides, with Sasuke's personality, even if Yoru refused outright, Sasuke had to be willing to accept the refusal. If Sasuke didn't, Yoru's rejection would mean nothing, and Sasuke would just keep pestering him. Yoru had no interest in dealing with such trouble. After hearing Yoru's words, Sasuke lifted his head and looked at him, asking seriously, do I really have a chance? It was rare for Sasuke to show such a lack of confidence. Yoru smiled and said, trust me. You'll become far stronger than your brother. You're just being too impatient. Training takes time. You can't rush it. You can't become strong overnight, and your eyes need to be developed step by step. You're only 12 years old, why are you in such a hurry? Remember, a ninja's peak combat power comes after the age of 20. Do you think you're weak right now? Ask Kakashi-sensei, you're already stronger than many Chunin. As long as you learn more from Kakashi about developing the Sharingan and awakening the power of your Uchiha bloodline, it's not impossible for you to defeat your brother, or even the Hokage. Don't forget, the reason the Sharingan is feared throughout the ninja world is because it truly possesses a power that can bring despair. Lately, Sasuke had been feeling hopeless and defeated. But after hearing Yoru's words, he calmed down and regained his confidence. However, Sasuke soon noticed something odd and asked Yoru with a puzzled look, but you're the same age as me, so why are you so strong? Your strength right now surpasses even Jonin, and you've even defeated elite Jonin. Yoru hesitated for a moment, then quickly replied, that's because I've hit my growth spurt, and you haven't yet. Let me give you an example. If Naruto suddenly mastered the power of the Nine Tails, his strength would instantly rise to the level of a Hokage. I've been accumulating strength for years. You only see how strong I am now, but you didn't see the years of hard training and the blood and sweat I poured into reaching this level. Your growth spurt will come when your Sharingan awakens the three Tomoe. By then, I'll be the one looking up to you. Kakashi-sensei is incredibly strong with just one Sharingan. Think about it, you have two. If you awaken the three Tomoe, do you really think you'll be weaker than Kakashi-sensei? Your brother only has the three Tomoe Sharingan, right? By the way, how old was your brother when he left the village? Sasuke frowned and answered, 13. He remembered it clearly. See? Your brother left the village at 13, which means he hasn't had a teacher for all these years. On top of that, he's been on the run from Hidden Leaf Village. Do you think he's had time to train? Maybe his strength has even degraded since he left Hidden Leaf Village. And what about you? You have the peace and stability of Hidden Leaf Village, a systematic education, and excellent teachers. Hidden Leaf Village has plenty of Jonin, like Kakashi-sensei, who is not only a master of ninjutsu but also has deep knowledge of the Sharingan. There are also elite jonin who specialize in taijutsu and ganjutsu, many of whom are Kakashi-sensei's classmates and friends. What's your relationship with Kakashi-sensei? Of course, you can go to him for guidance on ninjutsu, taijutsu, and ganjutsu. Your brother, wandering the ninja world, has such favorable conditions. Most importantly, you have more time to train, and by going on missions, you can turn your training into real combat experience. That's why I believe you'll surpass your brother. Of course, Yoruo was making all of this up. His goal was simply to keep Sasuke from bothering him. Still, Yoruo's words weren't entirely without merit. So Sasuke couldn't refute them and ended up believing him. Not just Sasuke, but even Naruto and Sakura seemed deep in thought. Yoruo secretly wiped his sweat. Kakashi, on the other hand, was staring at Yoruo in confusion. What is this kid's mouth made of? How is he so persuasive? The most ridiculous part was that Kakashi knew Yoruo's entire speech had one purpose: don't bother me, go to Kakashi. If Kakashi can't help, go to the other Hidden Leaf Village ninja. It was a blatant attempt to shift the responsibility. But Kakashi couldn't really say anything. After all, Yoruo's points were hard to refute. Kakashi was Sasuke's Jonin instructor, and it was his responsibility to guide him. If Sasuke asked Kakashi to introduce him to Might Guy, Asuma, or even Kurenai, Kakashi really had no reason to refuse. Chapter 85. Sasuke was convinced by Yoruo's words, and his previously restless heart calmed down. Nearby, Naruto was also persuaded by Yoruo's earlier statement that if he could master the power of the Nine Tails, his strength would skyrocket. Once Naruto and Sasuke stopped pestering Yoruo to teach them ninjutsu, Yoruo secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He really didn't want to be bothered by these two, it was way too troublesome. Kakashi and Sakura, who had been mostly silent, were stunned as they watched Yoruo. They hadn't expected Yoruo to actually convince Naruto and Sasuke. Although they hadn't been together for long, Kakashi and Sakura both knew that Naruto and Sasuke were incredibly stubborn. Persuading them was no easy task. Yet Yoruo had managed to do it. The mission was pretty much complete at this point, and the following days were peaceful. Gato didn't hire any more ninja to cause trouble. Still, just to be safe, Kakashi decided to stay until the bridge was fully completed before leaving. During this time, aside from protecting Tazuna with Sakura, Yoruo spent his days at Tazuna's house learning sealing techniques from Kakashi. Whether it was day or night, Yoruo was always busy. During the day, he either went to protect Tazuna or practiced sealing techniques. At night, he had to deal with Inari. Since Yoruo had saved Inari, and the boy had witnessed Yoruo defeating the ninja Gato had hired, Inari had become completely idolized Yoruo and constantly pestered him to play. In Inari's eyes, Yoruo was a true hero. If it weren't for the fact that he wasn't from Hidden Leaf Village, Inari would have already asked Yoruo to be his teacher. Yoruo didn't really want to entertain him, but he couldn't bring himself to refuse. So every night, Yoruo would set aside some time to play with Inari. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, was also very kind to Yoruo, often cooking his favorite dishes. In Tazuna's household, Yoruo received as much respect as Kakashi, if not more. In fact, Tazuna's family treated Yoruo even better than they treated Kakashi. After all, the strength Yoruo had displayed that day was overwhelmingly impressive. To them, Yoruo seemed even stronger than Kakashi. Over the next few days, Yoruo learned various sealing techniques like the contract seal, the evil sealing method, and the fire sealing method. He mastered all the sealing techniques Kakashi knew. On top of that, Yoruo's chakra reserves had doubled compared to before. However, the rate at which his chakra was increasing had slowed down significantly. In over 10 days, it had only doubled. Back when he first started, his chakra had been doubling almost every day. But Yoruo wasn't too concerned. Even with just a doubling of his chakra, his reserves were now firmly at Kage level, and among Kage level shinobi, his chakra was exceptionally vast. Plus, the chakra Yoruo used was different from that of ordinary ninja. In reality, his chakra reserves might have already surpassed the Kage level. What Yoruo lacked now was practical combat experience and taijutsu. He wasn't in a rush about combat experience. Yoruo knew that it would take a lot of time and real battles to accumulate. As for taijutsu, that would also require a lot of time to train. Yoruo didn't expect to reach Might Guy's level, that kind of skill was top tier in the ninja world. He just needed to make sure his taijutsu wasn't a weakness. Exhausting him should be enough. Yoruo's chakra reserves now absolutely dwarfed Naruto's by several times, though they still couldn't compare to the Nine Tails. But then again, few shinobi in the entire shinobi world could rival the tailed beast's chakra. Only legends like Madara Uchiha and Senju Hashirama might stand comparison. Yorua's reserves were still light years away from those monstrous levels. Hell, even considering that Naruto only had half of Kurama sealed within him. Yorua's chakra didn't even measure up to that partial Nine Tails power. Let alone comparing to Hashirama, who supposedly had more chakra than the full Nine Tails. Still, even being in the same ballpark as half-a-tailed beast was insane. Currently in the shinobi world, aside from Jinchuriki and the tailed beasts themselves, barely anyone could claim greater chakra than Yorua. Of course, Yorua himself remained oblivious to these comparisons. He had no idea how his reserves measured against others, though he did know he now possessed far more chakra than Kakashi, easily several times over. Strangely, despite this massive power boost, Yorua's personality remained unchanged. No swelling arrogance, no sudden thirst for battle. He maintained his usual lazy demeanor, still avoiding conflicts whenever possible. Even when pestered by Naruto's antics, Sasuke's challenges, or little Inari begging to play, Yorua would just sigh and reluctantly comply. This was precisely why Inari idolized him, a powerful shinobi who'd still humor a child's games, though Yorua would insist it was mere resignation. Now, in their shared room at night, Kakashi sat cross-legged before Yorua, with Team 7 forming a circle around them. 4 pairs of eyes locked onto the silver-haired Jonin. "Do we really have to do this now?" Yorua complained, scratching his cheek. "Can't this wait until we're back in the village?" Kakashi's visible eye crinkled. "If we do this back in the village, it might cause too much commotion. Better handle it here." Naruto then bowed deeply, his voice uncharacteristically serious. "Please, Yorua, you're our only hope." Sasuke and Sakura leaned forward with intense curiosity. With a resigned sigh, that hid his own scientific interest, Yorua relented. This whole situation stemmed from Yorua's recent mastery of sealing techniques. After witnessing the 4th Hokage's failsafe weakening during Naruto's last rampage, Kakashi wanted Yorua to reinforce the Nine-Tails seal. It was insane, entrusting such crucial work to someone who just learned sealing arts. One mistake could unleash the Kyuubi with no one present to subdue it. Yet here they were, with Naruto voluntarily exposing his stomach's swirling seal. As Yorua formed hand signs, his consciousness plunged into the seal's dark dimension. Drip. Drip. The dank, watery chamber materialized around him. Before the massive corroded gate, Yorua muttered, "No wonder Kurama's always pissed. Who designed this sewer-like prison?" Chapter 86. When the Nine-Tails was sealed inside Uzumaki Mido and Uzumaki Kushina, it had been pinned against a scorching magma boulder, nailed down completely. Now, simply being confined in a cage was already a far better situation. No wonder the Nine-Tails had never gone berserk while inside Mido or Kushina. Even without considering how powerful the sealing techniques used on it were, just their adamantine chains alone were enough to suppress it completely. Back then, even when Kushina was on the verge of death, the adamantine chains she released still left the Nine-Tails utterly immobilized. If not for the fact that extracting the Nine-Tails meant certain death for her, the beast would never have had a chance to escape from her body. In truth, the adamantine chains were a sealing technique that Yorua really wanted to learn. Unfortunately, this jutsu was bound to the Uzumaki clan's bloodline. Even Kakashi didn't know it. Yorua arrived at the space where the Nine-Tails was sealed. He pushed open the giant iron gate in front of him. Inside the cage, the Nine-Tails, which had been lying down, sensed the door opening. Its eyelids lifted slightly. A pair of blood-red pupils emerged from the darkness of the prison. The Nine-Tails assumed Naruto had entered. But as Yorua slowly stepped inside, the beast frowned. It's not that brat?" Realizing that the visitor wasn't Naruto, the Nine-Tails' expression turned furious. It even stood up, letting out a deafening roar at Yorua. The sheer pressure of its power left Yorua completely shaken. Just from its roar alone, he could sense its terrifying might. If they were outside, this single roar would be comparable to the power of an A-rank jutsu. And not just any A-rank jutsu, but a large-scale one. This was Yorua's first time seeing the Nine-Tails, and he finally gained a proper understanding of its power. It was indeed overwhelmingly strong. But Yorua also knew that, right now, the Nine-Tails was tightly sealed by the 8-trigram seal and had no way of escaping. If it really did break free, Yorua had no chance of defeating it. As expected of the nine-tailed demon fox, you really are as powerful as the legends say. Yorua muttered to himself. The Nine-Tails was surprised that Yorua wasn't intimidated. Its massive eyes locked onto him as it spoke coldly. "Brat, who are you? Why are you here?" Yorua remained silent for a moment before finally looking up and saying, "So you're the Nine-Tails." The Nine-Tails' expression darkened, but it said nothing. Yorua continued as if talking to himself, "You really are powerful. But because you're so powerful, I definitely can't let you out. If you were freed, there wouldn't be anyone who could seal you again." Hearing this, the Nine Tails became enraged. Roar! Brat, you're seeking death. Another earth-shaking roar followed. The immense chakra pressure pushed Yoru back several steps. And this was merely the residual force leaking from the Nine Tails. It was terrifying to imagine how devastating it would be if the Nine Tails were actually released. Yoru had no confidence that he could reseal the beast. He would already be lucky just to survive. If the Nine Tails were to break free now, there was no one in Hidden Lee Village who could seal it. Not even the third Hokage. Even if he used the dead demon-consuming seal, the Nine Tails would have to be restrained first. Who could possibly accomplish that? The only reason Minato no Mikaze had managed to use the dead demon-consuming seal on the Nine Tails back then was that Kushina had used her adamantine chains to lock it down beforehand. But now, there was no one in Hidden Lee Village capable of restraining the Nine Tails. Not to mention, the dead demon-consuming seal was a one-time use technique. The third Hokage would never willingly resort to it unless absolutely necessary. Because of this, Yoru felt immense pressure at the moment. If he made a mistake and the Nine Tails broke free, even if he managed to survive, Naruto would not. A Jinchuriki could not live if their tailed beast was extracted. Even someone as strong as Uzumaki Kushina had only managed to survive for a short while thanks to the powerful vitality of the Uzumaki clan. For an ordinary Jinchuriki, losing their tailed beast meant instant death. The Nine Tails continued to roar at Yoru, recklessly unleashing its chakra. The iron gate sealing it trembled, as if the beast was on the verge of breaking free at any moment. However, Yoru knew that the sealing formula was still intact enough that the Nine Tails couldn't escape yet. But if Naruto kept drawing on the Nine Tails' power, the seal would only weaken further. And telling Naruto to stop using the Nine Tails chakra was impossible. Whenever he got angry or lost control, he would be forced to rely on it, whether he wanted to or not. Which meant that the seal inside Naruto would continue to weaken over time. The Nine Tails roared for a long time, shaking the entire space, but after Yoru's initial shock, he remained unfazed. After all, the Nine Tails was still sealed, and the amount of chakra it could leak out was limited. And even then, the amount of chakra it had released was nothing compared to Yoru's own reserves. For an ordinary Jonin, the Nine Tails chakra would be overwhelming. But for Yoru, it wasn't worth worrying about. After a while, Yoru finally spoke in a calm tone, "Alright, enough of your howling. You should know by now that none of this is doing anything to me." The Nine Tails, which had been roaring just moments ago, suddenly stopped. Its eyes gleamed with cold malice as it asked, "Brat, who exactly are you? Why are you here?" Yoru stood with his hands in his pockets, looking at the beast before him. "I'm Naruto's friend. I came here today because I wanted to see the legendary Nine Tails for myself. Now that I've seen you, I have to admit, you really are powerful. I can't even imagine how terrifying the person who sealed you away must have been. You keep trying to lure Naruto into using your chakra, hoping to weaken the fourth Hokage's seal, aren't you? Well, that won't do. If you break out now, no one in Hidden Lee Village can stop you. I came here to reinforce the fourth Hokage's seal." Hearing this, the Nine Tails nearly burst into laughter. "Ha! Brat, you sure know how to talk big. Do you even know what a sealing technique is? You think you can strengthen the fourth Hokage's seal? Who do you think you are?" The Nine Tails didn't believe for a second that Yoru knew sealing techniques. Sealing techniques were extremely difficult to master. Even the most basic ones required great expertise, let alone the fourth Hokage's 8-trigram seal. That was an Uzumaki clan technique, having been sealed by 3 different Uzumaki over the decades. The Nine Tails knew better than anyone how powerful their sealing jutsu was. Yoru wasn't bothered by the beast's mockery. He knew the Nine Tails had always been like this. Believe it or not, but you'll be staying inside Naruto for the rest of your life. Don't even think about escaping. I'm getting started now, so don't interrupt me." Yoru didn't want to waste words with the Nine Tails. He swiftly formed hand seals. In an instant, golden chakra erupted from his body. The Nine Tails, which had been sneering just moments ago, suddenly froze. "This chakra. Why does it feel so familiar? Brat, who the hell are you?" The Nine Tails roared in anger. But Yoru ignored it. He wasn't going to reinforce the seal immediately. First, he needed to analyze the state of Minato's 8-trigram seal to determine the best approach. Meanwhile, the Nine Tails watched the chakra surging from Yoru and grew visibly tense. Because this chakra reminded it of Hashirama Senju. Even though Yoru was still young, he possessed an enormous amount of chakra. Not as much as the Nine Tails itself, but still far beyond what someone his age should have. It was clear, Yoru was no ordinary person. The sheer presence of his chakra was enough to make the Nine Tails wary. What Yoru didn't realize was that his chakra had already deeply shocked the Nine Tails. The beast wasn't even sure if it could suppress him. Because Yorua's chakra wasn't just normal chakra, it was senjutsu chakra. And the Nine Tails knew just how powerful senjutsu chakra was. Back then, Hashirama Senju's chakra had felt just like this. Not only that, but it also carried an overwhelming vitality, just like Hashirama's. The Nine Tails was starting to suspect, was Yoru a descendant of Hashirama Senju? Chapter 87. After completing the rapid sequence of hand seals, mysterious runes appeared beneath Yorua's feet. These runes transformed into black chains that shot toward the iron gate's lock, which held the Nine Tails captive. Buzz. The moment Yorua's chakra surged into the seal, intricate symbols emerged on the gate's lock. Yorua immediately opened his eyes, furrowing his brows. So complex. As expected, the fourth Hokage's 8 trigram seal isn't something simple. But at most, it just consumes more chakra. Yorua increased the flow of his chakra. Rumble. An overwhelming surge of chakra poured into the sealing lock. Even the Nine Tails was shocked by the sheer amount. What kind of monster is this brat? How can someone his age have such an insane amount of chakra? As Yorua continued to channel chakra, the Nine Tails could feel the previously weakened seal strengthening once more. Stop. Boom. Realizing the seal was becoming stronger, the Nine Tails became furious. It slammed a massive claw against the iron gate, causing a violent tremor, but it didn't affect Yorua's technique at all. I said stop, you damn brat. You bastard, are you planning to lock me in here forever? You vile human. I'll kill you. Kill you. Roar. Boom. 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 The moment the Nine Tails realized Yorua could actually reinforce the seal, it became desperate. It had been waiting for years, knowing that every time Naruto relied on its chakra, the seal weakened a little more. It wouldn't be long before it could finally break free from this dark, oppressive prison. But now, Yorua was ruining everything. Keeping it locked inside Naruto forever? What a joke. Roar. Seeing that Yorua wasn't stopping, wasn't even acknowledging its fury, the Nine Tails lost its patience. It began gathering chakra. A deep red sphere of compressed energy rapidly formed in its mouth, a tailed beast ball. Die, you little brat. Feeling the terrifying energy of the tailed beast ball, Yorua frowned slightly. But he didn't stop. He wasn't sure if the Nine Tails could actually harm him in this space. Meanwhile, outside, a crimson shroud of chakra began to form around Naruto's body. The color of the tailed beast cloak darkened, its intensity growing. Naruto's consciousness was fading. Kakashi's eyes widened in alarm. He tried to stop Naruto, but the instant his hand touched the shroud, he was burned. Stunned, Kakashi muttered, so this is the Nine Tails chakra. The corrosive power is this strong? Sasuke and Sakura, standing nearby, were equally shocked. Naruto has such terrifying power sealed inside him? Yorua's consciousness was still inside Naruto's seal, leaving his body motionless in the real world. Kakashi wanted to intervene, but he feared that interrupting Yorua might put him in danger. Left with no choice, he turned to Sasuke and Sakura. Sasuke, Sakura, take Tazuna and get him far away from here. If Naruto loses control, he could hurt them. Kakashi regretted not being more prepared for this situation. He looked at Yorua's emotionless face, deeply worried for his safety, but at this moment, there was nothing he could do. Sasuke and Sakura, though concerned for both Yorua and Naruto, nodded and moved to carry out his orders. But for now, they could only follow Kakashi's orders and move Tazuna's family to safety. Fortunately, Tazuna's home was far from the town. If Naruto lost control, the destruction would be catastrophic. After Sasuke and Sakura left, Kakashi remained by Yorua's side, watching him and Naruto with a tense expression. Yorua showed no emotion, while Naruto's face twisted in pain. The crimson shroud of the tail beast cloak darkened further, and even without touching him directly, Kakashi could feel the sheer, oppressive menace of the Nine Tails chakra shaking his very soul. The furniture and objects in the room trembled under the constant waves of chakra, cracks forming throughout. The blood-red chakra swirling around Naruto radiated immense pressure, making even Kakashi feel suffocated. Inside Naruto's seal, Yorua was also under immense strain. The tailed beast ball in the Nine Tails' mouth was fully charged. He wasn't sure if, in this space, its attack could actually threaten his life. Yet, Yorua did not stop. He continued pouring chakra into the seal. The runes beneath his feet expanded, and the chains formed by the symbol surged wildly into the sealing lock. Sealing techniques consumed an enormous amount of chakra, but Yorua's reserves were vast, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to sustain the technique for so long. The Nine Tails saw that Yorua remained unfazed despite its threats. Its fury exploded. Die, you little brat. Boom. The Nine Tails unleashed the tail beast ball. Rumble. 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 The attack crashed into the iron gate, sealing it away. A blinding light illuminated the entire space. The monstrous chakra shockwave instantly struck Yorua. He hadn't expected that even in this realm, the Nine-Tails chakra could actually harm him. Ugh! Caught off guard, Yorua took the full brunt of the attack. The impact blasted him backward, slamming him hard against the wall. In the real world, Yorua coughed up blood. His crimson blood splattered onto Naruto, but the moment it touched the tailed beast cloak, it was instantly corroded and burned away. Kakashi, standing beside Yorua, tensed up and was about to intervene. Yorua's face had gone pale. Since arriving in this world, this was the first time he had ever coughed up blood, the first time he had suffered such a serious injury. Just as Kakashi was about to wake him, Yorua finally spoke. Though he was clearly in pain, his voice remained cold and firm. Kakashi-sensei, I'm fine. Don't worry. Kakashi halted. Yorua's consciousness had returned. No, this is too dangerous. If something happens to you, how am I supposed to explain it to the Hokage? Kakashi's expression darkened. What he truly wanted to say was that he didn't want Yorua taking such a risk in the first place. Seeing Yorua's spit blood had shattered his patience. At that moment, he realized something. Yorua's safety mattered far more than the Nine-Tails sealed within Naruto. But Yorua only shook his head, his face serious. I'm fine. I was just testing whether the Nine-Tails could actually harm me in this space. I let my guard down, that was my mistake. It won't happen again. Kakashi-sensei, please leave. Stay away from me. I don't want you getting caught up in what happens next. Kakashi frowned. I'm not leaving you alone in such a dangerous situation. Kakashi-sensei, trust me. I need to handle this. If you stay, I won't be able to focus properly. For the first time, Yorua spoke to Kakashi in such a serious tone. Kakashi looked into Yorua's determined eyes. He knew that staying would only be a distraction. Even though he was worried, Yorua's expression told him there was no turning back. With no choice, Kakashi sighed, gave one last glance at Yorua and Naruto, then disappeared from the room. Chapter 88. After persuading Kakashi to leave, Yorua once again submerged his consciousness into Naruto's sealed space. Inside the sealed space, he saw the Nine-Tails continuously launching tailed beast bombs at the massive iron gate of the seal. The gate had already begun to tremble. Yorua stood up from the ground, dragging his nearly broken body, and slowly walked toward the Nine-Tails. Nine-Tails, you don't actually think you can get out, do you? No matter how much you struggle, it's all in vain. The Nine-Tails looked at Yorua with a grave expression. Brat, you really are something else. I can't believe you're still alive. Yorua straightened his posture, looked up, and smiled. Yeah, I didn't expect it either. I can actually get hurt in this space. This is the worst injury I've had in years. Hey. But that doesn't change anything. I'll just reinforce the seal again. You can forget about ever getting out in this lifetime. As he spoke, Yorua formed hand seals, preparing to cast another sealing technique. Mysterious runes appeared beneath his feet. The Nine-Tails glared at Yorua, furious yet increasingly wary. Yorua hadn't noticed, but the beast had. When its tailed beast bomb struck him earlier, his chakra had instinctively formed a golden barrier around him, protecting him. Otherwise, spitting up blood would have been the least of his worries. Even if he had survived, he would have likely been reduced to a vegetative state. And that power, Nine-Tails had never seen anything like it before. It resembled Sage Chakra but was even stronger. Even Sage Chakra couldn't have withstood its tailed beast bomb head-on. The presence Yorua exuded felt like a threat to its very soul. What is this kid's power? Why does it feel even more dangerous than that Hashirama? As Yorua continued reinforcing the seal, the Nine-Tails, despite its rage, refrained from further attacks. Instead, it taunted him with words. Brat, all this effort is pointless. As long as that little fool Naruto keeps using my chakra, the seal will only grow weaker. You can't possibly stay by his side forever. Yorua ignored the taunt. Hey. Brat. Are you deaf? At that moment, Yorua finally lifted his head and said calmly, I don't need to be with him all the time. And no, this seal won't last forever. But when it finally breaks, it'll be because Naruto has completely tamed you and mastered your power. Ha ha ha. You must be insane. That little brat? Tame me? What a joke. If you were my Jinchuriki, I might believe it. You're stronger than my last two hosts, and I acknowledge your potential for the future. But Naruto? Ha. That brat doesn't even have pure Uzumaki blood. He doesn't know a single Uzumaki sealing technique. What gives him the right to control my power? What, is he going to master me by losing control of his emotions and begging for my chakra every time? Yorua sneered. So you've been locked up for so long that you've gone senile. If you can't see Naruto's potential, You're the real joke here. The Nine-Tails slammed a paw against the iron gate. Though the gate had been showing signs of loosening earlier, with Yorua's continuous repairs, the Nine-Tails attack could no longer shake it in the slightest.